Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. Its overwhelming force leaving the Raikage momentarily stunned. How was this possible? In just a single year, how had this woman grown so much stronger? Yet, as realization dawned, a familiar dread crept over him. That accursed misfortune had returned. An inexplicable misstep caused the Raikage to stumble at the worst possible moment, preventing him from evading the deadly arc of the Naginata. In the past, his lightning-style armor would have allowed him to withstand such an attack without a scratch. But now, before his feet even touched the ground, blood was already spraying into the air. What was even more disastrous was that the ground where he was about to land had been tampered with by a powerful ocular technique. Though it appeared ordinary, countless explosive tags lay hidden beneath the surface. Boom. 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 A series of violent explosions erupted, engulfing the Raikage entirely. Raikage-sama. The second Raikage was momentarily paralyzed with shock, unable to decide whom to blame. Those explosive tags didn't seem like the handiwork of the Uchiha. Could it be that the Land of Iron had secretly allied with Hidden Leaf Village, aiming to wipe out all four Kage in one fell swoop? Just as these thoughts sent chills down his spine, a shadow suddenly plummeted from the sky. Mizukage-sama. Genjutsu Hazuki rushed forward, prepared to fend off any further threats. When the others looked closely, they realized that the figure crashing to the ground, blood trailing from his waist, was none other than Byakuren, the Mizukage of Hidden Mist Village. How had he fallen so suddenly? Before anyone could make sense of the situation, yet another impact rang out. With a dull thud, Tsuchikage Ishikawa landed not far away, his breath labored. Mew, the second Tsuchikage, did not roar in rage. Instead, he silently moved to guard his fallen leader. In his palm, a pale white light quietly flickered to life. No. Ishikawa's weak voice interrupted. Grasping Mew's wrist, he shook his head. The Hokage is simply too fast. Your particle style may not be effective against him. And besides, he continued with a bitter chuckle, we never intended to make Hidden Leaf Village our enemy. I imagine those two fools are regretting their choices now. At those words, Mew retracted his particle style and looked up at the lone figure standing triumphantly in the sky. So this is the power of a Super Kage. The second Hokage of Hidden Leaf Village. Yuga-yaoi. Thus, the 5 Kage summit reached its perfect conclusion. Hidden Leaf Village had displayed overwhelming strength, standing alone against 4 Kage and emerging dominant. The shocking outcome left the world speechless, silencing all doubts about Hidden Leaf Village's might. Only now did everyone realize, it was not just the 4 other villages that had been scrutinizing Hidden Leaf Village. The Land of Fire, too, needed to flex its strength to maintain its reputation. The first ever 5 Kage summit had become nothing more than Hidden Leaf Village's grand stage to flaunt its power. Every informed observer reached the same conclusion. The combined might of the other 4 villages could not compare to Hidden Leaf Village's strength. And what was even more terrifying, Hidden Leaf Village's younger generation was steadily growing stronger. Within the next decade, they would rise to become the most formidable force in the shinobi world. Only much later did the world came to understand, it was not that Hidden Leaf Village had suddenly become stronger, but that its foundation had always been unshakably firm. In the past, the dazzling brilliance of Kyosuke Uchiha, Madara Uchiha, and Senju Hashirama had overshadowed all others. But now, in their absence, a new generation of shinobis was stepping into the light. Haruto Uchiha needed no further mention. Saratobe Hiruzen, Shimura Denzo, and Kurama Jun. All of them possessed astonishing power. Among the older generation, there were still warriors like Izuna, Kaku, and Tobirama, whose strength had reached the threshold of Super Kage level. Even calling Hidden Leaf Village overflowing with talent felt like an understatement. What the world did not yet know was that beyond its elite forces, Hidden Leaf Village had another hidden advantage. A final trump card left behind by Kyosuke Uchiha. The knowledge of scientific ninja tools. Over the years, he had secretly acquired numerous research companies, dedicating resources to technological advancements across various industries. Before his departure, Kyosuke had entrusted all of this to Yaoi, urging her to develop fully functional scientific ninja tools as soon as possible. The enemies they would face in the future would only grow more formidable. Especially the Otsutsuki clan. With their monstrous regenerative abilities, battles against them would be anything but simple. Back then, Kyosuke had begun to wonder. Aside from igniting the divine flame of true power, was there another way to inflict lasting damage on the Otsutsuki? Chapter 258, Obliteration, Domination, or Coexistence. The Otsutsuki worldview? There are only a handful of ways to inflict harm upon the Otsutsuki. Aside from conventional methods, there is one that cannot be overlooked by anyone. That is the use of scientific tools created through advanced technology, commonly referred to as scientific ninja tools. These tools have largely replaced certain abilities of shinobi and can prove invaluable in emergencies. Their existence has brought tremendous convenience to both ninja and ordinary people alike. Scientific ninja tools can be broadly categorized into 4 types. Chakra capacitor type. These tools function by utilizing chakra capacitors to store the necessary chakra for performing ninjutsu. The concept of sealing ninjutsu within scrolls has existed since the Warring States period, and creating miniature scrolls is not particularly complex. By embedding such scrolls into devices, even non-shinobi can use them to unleash powerful techniques simply by operating the machinery. The main drawback of this method is the limited capacity of the chakra storage. However, its advantage lies in its ease of use and efficiency, allowing even the large civilian population to be armed with formidable abilities. Bioengineering type scientific ninja tools. This category includes artificial limbs, synthetic organs, and other bioengineered body parts. Naruto's prosthetic arm, developed after the Fourth Great Ninja War, falls into this category. By integrating traditional puppet techniques with advancements in Hashirama cell extraction, it is possible to create artificial chakra pathways. These synthetic limbs function as seamlessly as an individual's natural body, enabling them to use ninjutsu, taijutsu, and even gather chakra without hindrance. Enhancement-type scientific ninja tools. These tools are designed to amplify a user's chakra and enhance the power of their jutsu. Simply by channeling chakra into them, they can unleash extraordinary effects. Examples include tools that allow users to climb walls effortlessly, ninja tools similar to Gatling guns, and devices capable of absorbing ninjutsu and converting it into chakra. One particularly terrifying innovation is a tool that disrupts the body's natural healing capabilities. Even an Otsutsuki would struggle against such a weapon, as its devastating effects leave lasting damage. Without a doubt, this type of scientific ninja tool is a trump card that must be developed in the future. Hidden Cloud's village has already created a chakra superconductor cannon, rumored to possess the power to obliterate the moon with a single strike. If its power can be further enhanced, it may one day become a crucial strategic weapon for protecting the shinobi world. Advanced technology type. This category focuses on upgrading traditional ninja gear through the application of cutting-edge science and technology. Examples include ultra-hard kunai made from non-metallic super ceramics, fire-resistant battle armor capable of withstanding minor fire-style techniques, nanofiber super cables, compact communication devices, and remote-controlled unmanned drones. Such advancements are particularly beneficial for ninja warfare. The reality is that many shinobi have significant skill gaps. Some are weak in ninjutsu or taijutsu, while others have little resistance to ganjutsu. However, by mastering the use of modified technological tools, these weaknesses can be effectively mitigated. According to Kyosuke's vision, future standard shinobi squads should incorporate scientific ninja tools into their combat techniques as a fundamental skill. The creation of these 4 categories of scientific ninja tools will allow Hidden Leaf Village to reach an unparalleled level of power, far surpassing all other nations. Once the foundational infrastructure is complete and a sufficient number of specialized personnel are trained, the path to dominating the shinobi world will finally open. By gathering the collective strength of the entire shinobi world and systematically cultivating talent across all fields, it may finally be possible to secure victory in the millennia-long war against extraterrestrial invaders. Kyosuke had long since made meticulous arrangements for these plans. Regardless of whether he remained alive or not, Hidden Leaf Village would continue following the path he had laid out. Of course, unforeseen events could still arise. Which was precisely why Madara Uchiha had been stationed in the shadows to ensure everything stayed on track. For instance, the existence of the Sage of Six Paths was beyond even Kyosuke's control. On the moon, at the ceiling altar as he stepped into the ancient chamber, Otsutsuki Hagoromo couldn't help but sigh. Unknowingly, countless years had passed since the battle between mother and son had came to an end. Throughout all this time, he had never set foot on the moon. However, now, the Sage of Six Paths had no choice but to return. The condensation of the sage's chakra fruit still required time. If another Otsutsuki invader appeared before then, he feared that, in his current state, he would be powerless to resist. For this reason, Hagoromo needed to gain deeper insight into his enemies. Which meant he had no choice but to meet with his mother once more. "You have come." Kaguya's voice rang out, devoid of any discernible emotion. Yes. The Sage of Six Paths nodded, his eyes betraying a hint of guilt. And a sliver of greed he himself had yet to recognize. If the Sage Chakra fruit failed to provide the necessary strength, then the shinobi world would lose its last hope of resisting the Otsutsuki. If that were to happen, then perhaps it would be better for him to claim its power for himself. Shaking his head vigorously to dispel such a dangerous thought, Hagoromo paused momentarily before delivering the news of Ishiki's death. "Where is Kyosuke?" Kaguya asked. "Dead." Hagoromo's tone was emotionless. Yet Kaguya, who knew her eldest son well, caught an unusual glimmer in his eyes. "Hagoromo, in the end, you have fallen as well." She let out a cold laugh, filled with mockery. Their conversation lasted for a long time. Given the stakes of life and death, the rabbit goddess did not withhold any information. Thus, the true nature of the Otsutsuki clan was laid bare before the Sage of Six Paths, revealing the terrifying depths of their existence. Since time immemorial, the Otsutsuki's ultimate goal had remained unchanged, to consume chakra endlessly and attain eternal life. In the beginning, they relied solely on instinct to absorb energy. However, finding this process too slow, they devised the Divine Tree. A monstrous creation that served as the juvenile form of the Ten-Tails. This grotesque innovation enabled them to refine and harvest chakra on an unprecedented scale. For centuries, millennia, and even tens of thousands of years, wherever the Otsutsuki set foot, entire worlds withered, their life force drained and condensed into ripened chakra fruits. No civilization, no species, and no land that fell within their grasp could escape annihilation. However, as time passed, anomalies inevitably emerged. During their interactions with native civilizations on various planets, some Otsutsuki began to develop compassion and sought to abandon the brutal, exploitative method of harvesting. Instead, they envisioned fulfilling their mission through governance rather than outright slaughter. Echoing the earlier, ambitious attempt of the rabbit goddess, Kaguya. By employing the Ten-Tails to pacify the world and establishing an empire under their absolute rule, they could gradually extract chakra from the elderly and weak, amassing energy in a less destructive manner. To distinguish themselves from their ruthless brethren, this faction of Otsutsuki eventually severed ties with their original clan. Over countless millennia, they evolved into a formidable faction of their own, calling themselves the Saint Sanctuary Faction. A group dedicated to distancing themselves from the brutality of their ancestors. Meanwhile, the merciless traditionalists remained steadfast in their age-old customs, forming the Avalon Faction. Clan members who continued to uphold the practice of harvesting planets through indiscriminate slaughter. As time passed, at an unknown point in history, a new ideological movement began to take shape within the Saint Sanctuary Faction. This new faction embraced the philosophy of absolute equality among all living beings. Instead of ruling over indigenous life forms, they sought to coexist in harmony, sharing chakra and teaching these native creatures how to harness it for their own survival. These believers in peaceful coexistence came to be known as the Equinox Faction. Thus, the Otsutsuki clan eventually divided into three primary factions: Avalon, Obliteration, those who adhered to the clan's original philosophy of consuming planets and exploiting their resources without mercy. Equinox, Coexistence, those who rejected dominion entirely and sought to integrate with native species, spreading chakra as a means of enlightenment and empowerment. Saint Sanctuary, Domination, those who ruled over indigenous life in a structured manner, collecting chakra through controlled sacrifice rather than wanton destruction. To put it simply, members like Ishiki and Momoshiki belonged to the Avalon faction, which was also the strongest in terms of raw power among the three groups. Kaguya, on the other hand, was a princess of the Saint Sanctuary faction. Her doctrine centered on ruling native civilizations and harvesting chakra through a long-term, sustainable approach. In the short term, the power of the Saint Sanctuary faction could never rival Avalon's sheer military might. However, from a broader perspective, their method held greater potential for long-term dominance and expansion. It was precisely for this reason that the Avalon faction could not sit idly by and allow their ideological adversaries to grow unchecked. This conflict eventually led to what Kaguya referred to as the Millennia War. And the outcome of that war? It was evident from Kaguya's fate. Once a princess of her faction, she had fallen so far as to become a mere subordinate to Ishiki. The brothers of the Six Paths Sage were more closely aligned with the Equinox faction, making them objects of scorn and ridicule among the other two factions. At the same time, however, they were the most beloved by the native beings of their world. As for the strength possessed by these factions, judging by the current state of the Six Paths Sage, it was hardly worth mentioning. The present-day reality was stark. The Avalon faction reigned supreme, continuing their unchecked slaughter across the cosmos. The Saint Sanctuary faction teetered on the brink of extinction, its scattered remnants struggling to survive. The Equinox faction, meanwhile, had been so thoroughly rejected that they were not even considered part of the Otsutsuki clan any longer. Beyond these three factions, the Otsutsuki clan also possessed two highly distinctive institutions. The first was the Grand Elders Council, a conclave of ancient, monstrous beings who had survived for at least 10,000 years. Their true power remained an enigma to all outsiders, shrouded in myth and speculation. The second was the Clan Enforcement Corps, a fearsome organization whose very name sent shivers through the hearts of intelligent civilizations across the universe. Among its ranks were the legendary 12 Apostles, each of whom had already ignited their divine flames twice. Their dujutsu was fearsome, their strength unparalleled, and any single one of them possessed the capability to reduce an entire planet like Earth to mere rubble. And they were not few in number. Ishiki Otsutsuki had come to Earth to claim the chakra fruit for one sole purpose: to ignite his own divine flame and secure his place in the ranks of the Clan Enforcement Corps. With just this single revelation, the Six Paths sage instantly grasped the vast disparity between their respective strengths. "This is the situation," Kaguya said with a cold sneer. "I do not wish to go against the ideology of my faction, but if I refuse to act, we will all become nothing more than sustenance for others. Is there truly no other way? Ha! You spread chakra and taught humans how to wield it, only for them to prove incapable of even protecting themselves. I understand." After a long and heavy silence, Hagoromo Otsutsuki let out a deep sigh. Perhaps, in the end, his mother had been right all along. He had labored tirelessly to establish the Ninshu, imparting the knowledge of chakra to humanity in hopes of guiding them toward a better future. And what had become of that effort? War. Endless, ceaseless war. The lives lost in the countless battles waged over the centuries could likely have produced multiple chakra fruits. Annihilating the shinobi world outright was beyond his capability. But he could no longer afford to remain naive. If this continued, extinction was the only future that awaited them all. It was time for change. "I will reconstitute the 10 tails and plant a divine tree," he declared solemnly. "When I ignite my divine flame, that will be the day you walk free from your seal." Kaguya remained silent, gazing at him with an unreadable expression. Whatever she was thinking, she kept it to herself. Hagoromo, however, did not pry. Ultimately, sealing his mother away had been a mistake. One that he and his brother had committed together. "In the meantime, you must keep your will, Avatar, from causing further disturbances," he added. "As for collecting the tailed beasts, I will ensure that the Ninshu emerges once more. Of course, the best course of action would be securing the cooperation of a major hidden village." The era had long since changed. If he wished to restore his mother's former glory, he would first have to reunify the shinobi world. His bloodline flowed through the Land of Fire. Naturally, Hidden Leaf Village would be the logical place to start. "Hagoromo, you are still as naive as ever," Kaguya mocked, a derisive smile playing on her lips. Did he truly think unifying the shinobi world would be so simple? She could already envision the suffering he would endure in his futile pursuit. Chapter 259, The Shinobi Sect Enters Hidden Leaf Village. Nagi's Uchiha's Great Crisis. Man proposes, but heaven disposes. These were the words of the Sage of Six Paths. Kaguya said nothing in response. Regardless of the outcome, the fact that she was freed was already a victory in itself. Even if the plan for unification ultimately failed, upon understanding the true threat posed by the Otsutsuki clan, she was certain that the shinobi world would one day require her power. Thanks to Kyosuke's prolonged conversations with her, Kaguya's perspective had undergone a dramatic shift. She now held an unshakable confidence. No matter which side emerged victorious in the struggles to come, her strength would be indispensable in the future battles against their common enemy. Well, that was assuming she could actually fight effectively. But learning was always an option, wasn't it? Combat? Surely, with some practice, she could master it. Deep in thought, Kaguya failed to notice the profound depth hidden beneath Otsutsuki Hagoromo's calm and composed gaze. Something that was nearly impossible for outsiders to perceive. Year 10 of the Hidden Leaf Village news reached the Uchiha clan. An unknown group of individuals was secretly meeting with the Senju. Even Hashirama, who had been bedridden due to prolonged illness, forced himself to endure his weakness and personally went out to receive them. This development immediately drew intense attention from the Uchiha. Though the Senju were currently in decline and had even begun to lose favor among the villagers, one could not forget that even a dying camel was still larger than a horse. Besides the Uchiha, they remained the strongest clan in the village. As long as Hashirama was alive, no one dared to move against the Senju. In fact, many were eagerly waiting for the day Hashirama would finally pass away. Yet, despite looking frail and on the verge of death for years, he stubbornly clung to life. Izune Uchiha found this incredibly frustrating. Unlike his older brother and Kyosuke, who saw Hashirama as a friend, Izuna had never harbored any intention of mending ties with the Senju. Hidden Leaf Village was Uchiha's village. That fact would never change. The Senju? They were nothing more than defeated foes. Had it been up to Izuna, he would have annihilated them completely during the battle at their stronghold. Of course, even if he had realized this too late, there was still time to correct past mistakes. Now, with Uchiha under his command, the Senju would be allowed to exist only as long as they behaved. If they dared to act out of line, then he would implement the Night of Annihilation plan ahead of schedule. Even if there were no willing executioners, Ganjutsu-induced hypnosis would suffice. That was Izuna's current mindset. Go. Investigate what the Senju have been up to lately. Although the Senju controlled the Hidden Leaf Village police force, their authority was more superficial than substantial. The true center of power lay within the Anbu, which was completely dominated by the Uchiha. At present, Kaku Uchiha was the one overseeing it. If there was any suspicion of Senju activity, the Anbu didn't even need permission. They could launch an investigation and conduct searches at will. Izuna was determined to uncover who was significant enough to warrant Hashirama's personal reception despite his fragile state. Hidden Leaf Village, Southern Commercial District, a popular yakiniku restaurant. Congratulations on graduating. A group of friends had gathered to celebrate Nagi's Uchiha's successful completion of her studies. It has now been 4 years since the passing of the first Hokage. The little girl who once clung to her elder brother's sleeve had grown into a graceful young woman. Wearing her hair in the same signature bun as her mother, Nagiza swayed her head from side to side, looking quite pleased as she skillfully flipped pieces of meat on the grill. Here you go, Unai-chan. Her brother was always her top priority. TSK, TSK. Princess Iri shook her head playfully, waiting for her own serving. Nagiza's eyes twinkled mischievously. She picked up a second piece of grilled meat with her chopsticks and, just as Iri was about to receive it, she bypassed her entirely and placed it in Kurama-jun's bowl instead. Thank you. 15-year-old Kurama-jun blushed as he accepted the food, his voice soft and hesitant. A rather reserved young man, he was thoughtful but often shy when it came to social situations. As she didn't give it to Iri first. She gave it to me. Does that mean? Other than Haruto, I'm the most important one to her. Despite his prowess in battle, Kurama-jun was quiet and withdrawn in daily life. One might even call him an introvert. For as he grew older, he spoke less and less. It seemed that his unorthodox teacher's influence had not affected him in the slightest. Ahem. Did you forget someone? Iri smiled sweetly, subtly reminding Nagiza of her presence. She had plenty of tricks up her sleeve and could easily get back at Nagiza. Yet, for the sake of family harmony, she often chose to play along, letting Nagi take the upper hand in their playful exchanges. Perhaps if she continued like this, she and he could. Lost in her own thoughts, Iri suddenly found herself grinning foolishly. Nagiza, who had been observing her closely, felt a question mark pop up in her mind. What's going on with her? I just gave her a piece of grilled meat. Why does she look so moved? Have I really been too harsh on her in the past? But I was just joking all those times. For some reason, Nagi's Uchiha felt an unexpected pang of guilt. As the peculiar atmosphere lingered, the group gradually filled their stomachs, leaving only Haruto's wallet considerably lighter in the process. Thanks for the meal. Kurama-jun waved with a cheerful smile before setting off alone toward his home. Of the remaining 3, Haruto intended to head off for training, and naturally, Iri was more than happy to accompany him. As for the newly graduated little one, she had already made plans with her teammates to meet at the training grounds later to discuss their strategy for the bell snatching test. Just how influential was Kyosuke in Hidden Leaf Village? The fact that he was the one who introduced the bell test spoke volumes. Ever since he started it, every year, whenever a new batch of students graduated, the instructors would replicate the same challenge. By now, it had practically become an unspoken tradition at the Ninja Academy. The graduation assessment was merely the foundation. Snatching the bell was the true test of whether one had the qualifications to be a ninja. Since everyone else was taking it seriously, there was no way Nagi's Uchiha would allow herself to fail in this game. To maximize her chances of success, she had specifically sought guidance from 3 senior figures. The bell test, huh? Haruto was momentarily lost in thought, as though recalling memories from when his father was still alive. I told you. When you launch a sneak attack, don't shout, you can't even hold your weapon properly, and you want to land a fatal blow. This Kusanagi sword. I'm entrusting it to you. May you one day restore its glory across the ninja world. Take care of your mother and your sister. Turning his head slightly, Haruto did not want anyone to see the tears welling in his eyes. Nagiza subconsciously clenched the fabric of her clothes, hesitating as she opened her mouth to say something. But before she could, Iri gently shook her head. Then, I'll get going now. I leave my brother in your care. Lowering her head, Nagi's Uchiha turned and dashed away from the scene as fast as she could. She was afraid that if she stayed a moment longer, she wouldn't be able to suppress the emotions surging in her chest. If that happened, it would only make her brother feel guilty. Even though she was the one who had brought up the topic in the first place. Dad. As memories of her father, who always wore a gentle smile, resurfaced, a glimmer of tears threatened to spill from the young girl's eyes. On the other side, Naruto, who had finally composed himself, smiled apologetically at his companion before the two of them continued on their way to the training grounds. However, before they could reach their destination, Uchiha clan members suddenly blocked their path. Something bad has happened. Miss Nagiza is in trouble. The warmth in Naruto's expression vanished instantly. His gaze turned ice cold, and a suffocatingly frigid chakra radiated from him, making Eri shudder in fear. Take me to her. A little earlier, Hidden Leaf Village's training ground number 3 bang. Ouch. What the heck? While sparring with her teammates, Nagi's Uchiha had accidentally bumped into a tall, middle-aged man. She had been retreating backward and hadn't noticed anyone behind her at all. Little did she expect that someone had been secretly observing her training. Among ninjas, such behavior was considered highly disrespectful. A ninja's combat ability was, in essence, a battle of intelligence. Revealing one's capabilities recklessly would only make it easier for enemies to exploit their weaknesses. Even a group of fresh graduates from the academy would not take kindly to an outsider spying on their training. Rubbing the dull ache at the back of her head, Nagi's Uchiha puffed up her cheeks in frustration and glared angrily at the middle-aged man. However, instead of apologizing, the man simply shook his head and spoke in an indifferent tone. So, this is the child of Kyosuke Uchiha. No sense of vigilance, no killing intent in her aura. I doubt her hands have even been stained with blood yet. Such naivete? How can she call herself a ninja? I once thought her father was a remarkable figure, but now I see he was nothing special after all. The so-called Ninja Academy. It seems all it produces is a bunch of worthless children. He was insulting her father. The instant his words registered, the childish innocence in Nagi's Uchiha's eyes vanished without a trace. A crimson glow ignited within her pupils, and 3 jet black tomoe spun slowly within them. 3 tomoe Sharingan. Once the hallmark of powerful shinobi, the Sharingan had now become a natural ability that every Uchiha could awaken with age. While part of this development stemmed from Kyosuke's careful planning, Hyuga Yaoi had played an equally crucial role. Without her relentless decade-long research, the Uchiha clan would never have achieved such progress. Inspired by the shadow clone training method, Yaoi had pioneered a new technique. The scientific research shadow clone method. Simply put, she created shadow clones to conduct experiments in her place. All the knowledge and experience they acquired would eventually merge back into her mind. The result? Unlike physical training, which exhausted the body, this approach allowed for uninterrupted progress without physical strain. Given Nagi's inherent talent, it was only natural that she would awaken her 3 tomoe Sharingan. Sharingan. A flicker of rage crept into the middle-aged man's voice. Had she not activated it, he might not have been so provoked. But the moment she displayed the Sharingan, old memories of past battles flooded his mind. Interesting. Let's see for ourselves just how much of Indra's bloodline still remains. Seeing their teammate being threatened, Nagi's 2 companions immediately stepped up to help. However, they barely lasted half a minute before all 3 of them were sent sprawling on the ground, utterly defeated. The man grabbed Nagi's by the hair and lifted her off the ground, his eyes burning with a murderous intent so intense that she momentarily forgot her pain. My brother died at the hands of your father. I will have my revenge. I came to Hidden Leaf Village for one purpose. To wipe out the Uchiha clan. And I will start with you and your brother. As her body swayed in his grip, Nagiza caught sight of the embroidery on his collar. 2 distinct characters. Shinobi sect. What did that mean? The initial wave of terror she felt slowly began to subside. If this had happened outside the village, perhaps she would have been afraid. But here, in Hidden Leaf Village. The moment she realized she was still within the village, any lingering fear disappeared as if it had never existed. Nagiza knew. Her clan would never let anything happen to her. You bastard. Let go of Miss Nagiza. Sure enough, the Uchiha clan's guards had arrived. 2 highly skilled shinobi whom she recognized as some of the clan's strongest protectors. She had heard they were once part of some secret unit. Whatever it was, she knew they were powerful. Good. The middle-aged man smirked, violent chakra swirling ominously in his palm. Let's see how much chaos I can cause today. Chapter 260. The will of the shinobi sect cannot be denied. By the time Naruto arrived at the training ground, a large number of Uchiha clan members had already collapsed, lying motionless on the ground. The man standing at the center of the battlefield possessed an overwhelming strength, having effortlessly defeated every opponent who dared to challenge him. Among his fallen adversaries were even several seasoned Jonin. Warriors of exceptional skill. Such diluted blood. Has your lineage truly declined to this extent? The man's voice was filled with contempt as he scoffed. Waves of visible chakra radiated from his body, making the air around him tremble. With a mere stomp of his foot, the ground beneath him fractured into a web of deep cracks, sending shivers down the spines of those watching. Haruto narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. Without uttering a word, he stepped forward and knelt beside his younger sister, who was sitting on the ground, visibly shaken. "Are you all right?" His voice was steady, yet laced with concern. I'm fine." Clenching her teeth, Nagai Uchiha struggled to suppress the urge to cry. She wanted to be strong. She knew that if she broke down now, there would be no stopping her brother from going berserk. Unlike Haruto, she had never possessed extraordinary talent as a shinobi. She was not the pride of their clan, nor had she ever brought them honor. She had long accepted this reality. But even so, she didn't want to become a burden. Didn't want to be the reason for anyone's suffering. Even though her scalp throbbed with pain, even though resentment simmered in her heart, she forced herself to endure. "Brother, I'm all right. Everyone was only trying to protect me, that's all." She stopped mid-sentence. Her brother's gaze had fixed upon the top of her head, his pupils contracting slightly. The brutal treatment she had just endured had left her scalp swollen and red. The marks of violence were plain for all to see. Then, boom, a surge of chakra erupted from Haruto's body, his emotions no longer held in check. His hands clenched into fists as he turned to one of Nagai's friends. His voice was low, but it carried an unmistakable weight of fury. Was it him? His companion had no hesitation. Indignation burned in his chest, and now that someone had finally stepped forward to demand justice, he wasted no time in answering. Yes. It was him. Eager to make the situation clear, he recounted the entire incident in vivid detail, even exaggerating some parts in his anger. And when Haruto heard that the man had yanked his sister up by her hair, dragging her across the ground like a mere object, his fury could no longer be contained. "I promised our father that I would protect her. You! How dare you!" A surge of golden-brown chakra exploded from his body, spiraling skyward like an unrelenting storm. The sheer force of his rage sent a shockwave through the air, forcing everyone around him to instinctively retreat. This is. Among the onlookers, those with keen eyes had already realized what was happening. Rumble. As if in response to Haruto's wrath, the heavens themselves began to stir. Thunder rumbled ominously across the sky. Then, in an instant, a towering figure materialized. A colossal giant, over 100 meters tall, exuding an indescribable sense of dread and pressure. A fully formed Susanoo? The man at the center of the battlefield, the one who had started this conflict, suddenly let out a booming laugh. Ha 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 ha. So the Uchiha haven't completely lost their edge after all. Good. Then let me start by killing you. To avenge my brother. His name was Kaname. His older brother had once been the reincarnation of Azura, the 7th generation's chosen vessel. On that fateful day, his brother had made the ultimate sacrifice, holding the line against Kyosuke to ensure the safe retreat of the blackened Hagoromo. By the time Kaname had found his brother's body, it was already too late. What remained of him was nothing more than a headless corpse, lying in a pool of its own blood. That moment had forever changed Kaname. From that day on, he had sworn an unbreakable vow. He would have his revenge. Even if his true enemy was already dead, it didn't matter. The bloodline still existed. The debt remained unpaid. A son would answer for his father's sins. That was the way of the world. Clapping his hands together in a sharp, decisive motion, he invoked a powerful technique. Before the fully realized Susanoo, another massive entity took form. A titanic wooden construct, its presence no less imposing. Wood-style, wood golem jutsu. For the first time in many years, the shinobi world once again bore witness to a legendary battle. Susanoo against the wood golem. Among the older generation of warriors, some felt as if they had been transported back in time. To an era of endless war. Back then, two invincible figures had led the Uchiha to conquer foe after foe, shaping the history of the battlefield. Now, as they stood on the precipice of yet another titanic clash, an elder murmured softly to himself. "There's no going back, is there?" The battle between Susanoo and the wood golem shook the very foundations of the land, sending tremors through the village and drawing the eyes of all who lived within it. Meanwhile, elsewhere. Inside the Hokage's office, Yaoi's eyes widened as she sensed what was happening. Without a moment's hesitation, she shattered the window and leaped into the open air. As she moved, emerald flames ignited around her body. In an instant, she activated her Tenseigan chakra mode, her energy surging. But before she could intervene, a figure suddenly appeared before her. It was a man. His expression adorned with a constant, enigmatic smile. Hokage Dano. He greeted with an air of politeness. My name is Masaki, the 17th leader of the Shinobi sect. The Shinobi sect? Yaoi took a deep breath. She hadn't expected the guest the Senju had invited to be someone of such significance. I come at the behest of the Sage of Six Paths himself. To discuss the unification of the Shinobi world. Unification. She already had a good idea of what that meant. A response to the looming threat of the Otsutsuki. But what did that have to do with her? Get out of my way, she commanded, unbothered by politeness. For the first time, the man's ever-present smile wavered, his expression turning subtly cold. Hokage Dano. He spoke smoothly. Allow me to remind you. The will of the Shinobi sect has never been defied. Not once, since the age of the ancients. Yaoi scoffed, her tone dripping with scorn. Is that so? Then I'll be honored to be the first. Masaki's eyes narrowed. I advise you not to make a foolish mistake. How tiresome. With a soft sigh, Yaoi instantly appeared before her opponent. In the very next second, dazzling golden light erupted with a sudden brilliance. Golden will reincarnation explosion. Her strike was merciless. No matter what nonsense this so-called Shinobi sect preached, no one in this world was allowed to harm his child. She had made a promise. To protect his family, to ensure their safety. Yaoi would never go back on her word. Not to him. Enemy attack. The moment the Hokage moved, the Hidden Leaf Village Shinobi sprang into action. There was no way they would stand idly by. Soon, the village's alarm echoed across the sky. Yet it hadn't been blaring for long before someone forcibly silenced it. The police force. Are you trying to rebel? The one who had shut off the alarm was none other than Senju Tobirama, who had rushed to the scene. Humphrey, you're quick to throw accusations. Tobirama halted the escalating tension, speaking in a calm yet firm tone. The Shinobi sect is a distinguished guest personally invited by my elder brother, not an enemy attacking the village. You Uchiha should stop overreacting and losing your composure. With the authority he held, Tobirama forced everyone into hesitation, preventing them from acting recklessly. Fortunately, at that critical moment, the Anbu finally arrived. Leading them was none other than the first Anbu commander, Kaku Uchiha. What nonsense is this Shinobi sect? Hidden Leaf Village is not a place for them to run rampant. The moment she arrived, Kaku Uchiha didn't hesitate to confront them directly. Get out of my way. Otherwise, I'll declare the Senju clan guilty of colluding with the enemy. Just because you say it's collusion, does that make it so? Tobirama would never accept such an accusation. In truth, he genuinely believed that the arrival of the Shinobi sect was beneficial for Hidden Leaf Village. If the Shinobi world were to be unified, then someone would have to take the lead. The Shinobi sect, being an entity above worldly affairs, would not interfere in mundane conflicts. That meant the true power over the ninja world would ultimately fall into Hidden Leaf Village's hands. Tobirama was thinking of Hidden Leaf Village's future. But unfortunately, the Uchiha would never believe such words. That included the Uchiha woman standing before him. Kaku. How utterly unreasonable. Seeing that the conversation had broken down completely and conflict between the police force and the Anbu was imminent, Tobirama had no choice but to retreat with his men. If they truly fought, the Senju would be branded as traitors. The Hokage had engaged in battle. If he now interfered, what exactly was his intent? Would he be aiding the invaders? Would he be seen as a conspirator? Tobirama himself had often leveled such accusations against others. He knew better than anyone how dangerous these labels could be, especially when wielded by someone as skilled in subterfuge as Kaku Uchiha, who was a spy. At the same time, he cursed the Shinobi sect internally. What kind of fools were they to stir up such a mess? They must have spent too long hidden underground. After centuries of isolation, they had clearly lost the ability to navigate the world properly. Did they not understand where they were? This was Hidden Leaf Village. The strongest shinobi organization in the ninja world, home to tens of thousands of jutsu users. It was not far behind the shinobi sect at its peak. And now, these fools dared to march in with a handful of second-rate fighters, thinking brute force alone could bring Hidden Leaf Village to its knees? The sheer stupidity of it was laughable. To truly unify the shinobi world, both sides needed to cooperate. A forced submission would only ignite war. No matter what, he had to de-escalate today's conflict. With that resolve, he turned and strode toward the battlefield, determined to end the fighting before it escalated beyond control. If Hyuga Yaoi truly ignited a war, then today's events would spiral into chaos. Humphrey, what a bunch of fools. Kaku showed no leniency towards the enemy and immediately declared Hidden Leaf Village under wartime security measures. Spread the word. Label all those claiming to be part of the shinobi sect as hostile targets. If they resist, eliminate them without hesitation. Yes, ma'am. The battle at the training grounds ended as abruptly as it had begun. Haruto, wielding the power of Ketsu, certainty shot, delivered a decisive strike, piercing straight through Makujin and achieving remarkable results. Just as he was about to continue his assault and kill the detestable man on the spot, a figure suddenly appeared in the field. Enough. The newcomer had white hair and was racked with heavy coughs, appearing no different from an old man in his 60s or 70s. Yet in reality, he was barely past his 30s. In all of Hidden Leaf Village, only a handful of people could halt Haruto Uchiha in his wrathful state. And standing before him was one such man. Senju Hashirama. Haruto muttered the name under his breath. A legendary figure, a supreme powerhouse rivaling his father, a man regarded as a living deity. No matter how inflated his own confidence was, Haruto knew he was far from possessing the power to challenge Hashirama. The massive gorge carved by the thousand-armed Buddha had long since become a renowned landmark, one he had personally witnessed before. Simply put, such devastation was beyond human capability. Consider this a personal favor. I'm asking you. Please. Hashirama gave a wry smile. Brother, I'm fine now. Nagi's Uchiha also spoke, trying to pacify him. Seeing this, Haruto reluctantly dismissed his Susanoo and ascended from the sky, positioning himself protectively in front of his sister. You still owe me an explanation, he said firmly. That is only fair. Cough, cough. Hashirama coughed lightly before nodding in agreement. These were Kyosuke's children, and by extension, they were his juniors. Future guardians of Hidden Leaf Village. No matter what, he could not allow these young ones to become disillusioned with their village. Turning his gaze toward Kaname, whose face was twisted in barely restrained fury, Hashirama took a deep breath. Slowly, he straightened his previously hunched back. In that instant, an overwhelming aura surged forth, distorting the very fabric of the world around them. The atmosphere seemed to shift as if the heavens themselves trembled before his presence. The yang power inherited from the Sage of Six Paths was the only thing barely sustaining his life. The destruction wrought by the thousand-armed Buddha had been far too excessive. The immense strain of the Susanoo-enhanced defense had taken its toll on Hashirama, drastically depleting his life force. Even though his physical constitution had undergone another evolution, it was still insufficient to counterbalance the colossal amount of life force he had expended. Despite his condition, Hashirama still retained the strength of a mid-tier Six Paths level warrior, making his combat abilities comparable to that of Six Paths Obito. Taking down an opponent of Kaname's caliber, merely at the level of an Super Kage, was effortless. Slap. Before anyone could even register what had happened, the man had been sent flying by a single slap. Consider this your minor punishment. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention. Hidden Leaf Village will never yield to your demands. Chapter 261, Some things, if you touch them, you die. In the teachings of the Shinobi sect, every clan member is an inheritor of Azura's will. Even without Senju Hashirama's existence, they would never have chosen the Uchiha to act as the world's enforcers. Doing so would be akin to denying the sacrifices of their predecessors who had fought and bled for their beliefs. Not even the Sage of Six Paths himself had the right to demand such a decision from them. If he did, he would risk losing the faith of his followers. They chose to support Hidden Leaf Village partly out of respect for Hashirama, but more importantly, because they valued the village's prosperity and growth. To nurture the Senju of the forest and suppress the wicked Uchiha. This was the unwavering conviction held by every member of the Shinobi sect. Yet, just as they were about to act upon their beliefs, Hashirama, the very man seen by countless people as their beacon of hope, unexpectedly turned against them at a crucial moment. Kaname staggered as he pushed himself up from the ground, his mind still dazed from the blow he had received. He could not comprehend why he had been struck so suddenly. As confusion clouded his thoughts, he caught sight of the latest reincarnation of Azura. The man had silently approached the little Uchiha girl and crouched down beside her, his demeanor gentle as he offered comfort. Does it hurt? Hashirama's voice was soft, carrying a warmth that was completely out of place in the tense atmosphere. It's not too bad, really. Thank you, Uncle Hashirama. Nagi's Uchiha responded sweetly, her tone obedient and sincere. Her instincts told her that this kind Senju, who shared a close bond with her father, bore no ill intentions toward her. That's good. Hashirama nodded firmly at Haruto, his expression bright with approval. With a broad smile, he praised. You did well. Anyone who dares to threaten the village must not be spared. Though these words were directed at his friend's son, they were also a clear warning to Kaname. Hashirama would never forget the kindness the Shinobi sect had shown him, but he would not tolerate anyone making a move against Hidden Leaf Village. This was his absolute bottom line. An unshakable principle that no one, no matter who they were, could ever cross. Those who did would die. Kaname took a deep breath, suppressing his impulse to continue fighting. He knew that the boy's jujutsu was formidable. Without using his full power, he would not be able to match him. And as for the reincarnation of Azura standing before him, no one understood the depths of Hashirama's power better than Kaname. Even if the man was nearing the limits of his strength, he remained an opponent Kaname could never hope to surpass. You are truly determined to reject the shinobi sect's proposal. Kaname's tone was heavy, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. I have made myself clear. Hashirama's face darkened, his calm gaze exuding an oppressive force that made Kaname feel as though a mountain were crushing down on him. Anyone who seeks to interfere with Hidden Leaf Village is my enemy. He turned his head, looking toward the distant battlefield where the sounds of fierce combat rumbled through the skies. His voice remained steady but carried an undeniable warning. You have ignored my will time and time again, and now you dare to lay hands on Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi in plain sight. Do you intend to leave this village alive? This was no mere question. It was an outright threat. With both sides now tearing away any pretense of diplomacy, it was clear that Hashirama would protect the Uchiha, while the shinobi sect could never accept an alliance with their sworn enemy. That left only one path forward: conflict. The shinobi sect held themselves in high regard, believing that no matter which side they chose, their faction would ultimately dominate the shinobi world. Hidden Leaf Village had simply been the easiest choice, not a necessary one. If they so desired, Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Mist Village were options. Even Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Stones Village could be considered. Very well. Very well indeed. Kaname turned on his heel and swiftly made his way toward the outskirts of the village. Every unit of the shinobi sect had their own assigned objectives during this operation. Outright war was always the last resort. If they could achieve victory without bloodshed, it would be the ideal outcome. Of course, he did not believe that the great shinobi villages would accept Hidden Leaf Village's rule without resistance. Now that negotiations had failed here, he felt it was necessary to move quickly and seek out other nations. We're just letting him go? Naruto frowned in dissatisfaction, clearly displeased with Hashirama's decision to let the tiger return to its mountain. It's not always necessary to fight to the death. Hashirama chuckled heartily, his demeanor shifting back to his usual, easygoing self. He looked like an old man burdened with the weight of the world. Even though he was only in his early 30s. Watching the powerful enemy retreat, Naruto let out a deep sigh. He knew the situation was far from optimistic. The shinobi sect was utterly domineering. If they dared to attack the Hokage and his sister within Hidden Leaf Village itself, then what was there that they wouldn't do? Those ancient texts were nothing but lies. The so-called benevolence of the shinobi sect was a sham. In reality, they were nothing more than a band of tyrants who did whatever they pleased, abusing their strength to impose their will on others. If his father were still alive, those bastards wouldn't even dare step foot inside Hidden Leaf Village's borders. In the end, it's because I'm still too weak. Even with my complete body Susanoo, I can barely reach the initial stages of the Super Kage level. This won't do. I need to train harder. My father was able to suppress the Senju back then, and Richie Cave played a crucial role in that victory. Using the curse seal to store the Senjutsu chakra. It seems I must make a trip there. Determined, Naruto Uchiha resolved himself to shoulder the responsibility of protecting both Hidden Leaf Village and his clan. Meanwhile, high above in the sky, Masaki, the envoy representing the shinobi sect, was still locked in an intense battle with Hyuga Yaoi. He was neither an Azura reincarnate nor a descendant of the Sage of Six Paths. Merely a powerful warrior recruited by the shinobi sect from the outside world. Thanks to the sage's arrangements, he and many others had slumbered for 1,000 years, untouched by the passage of time. Having spent centuries immersed in the senjutsu-rich environment of Shikatsu Forest, Masaki's already formidable physique had gradually evolved into one perfectly attuned to natural energy. His mastery over senjutsu was unparalleled. He required no special aids. By simply manipulating natural energy, he could soar effortlessly through the sky. Your attacks will never land on me, Masaki said with a smirk, shaking his head. With natural energy at his command, he could predict his opponent's every move before it even happened. How could anyone possibly hope to challenge him? No matter how powerful an attack was, if it couldn't hit its mark, it was meaningless. Lifting a single hand above his head, he gathered natural energy and chakra, forming a rapidly spinning shuriken in his palm. This was a technique created by Azura himself. One that required no hand seals and could be infused with any type of energy at will. Without a doubt, it is an ultimate jutsu of the highest caliber. Such a boring trick. After exchanging countless blows, Hyuga Yaoi had already grasped the enemy's abilities. As expected of a shinobi sect warrior. His strength was extraordinary. Even among Super Kage level combatants, he was a force to be reckoned with. There were very few people in the entire shinobi world capable of evading her golden wheel reincarnation explosion. The shinobi sect is indeed formidable, she thought to herself, momentarily filled with admiration. However, her hands did not slow in the slightest. A brilliant golden beam erupted forth as the golden wheel shot straight toward the enemy's senjutsu-enhanced shuriken. When it came to a contest of raw offensive power, Yaoi had never feared anyone. Senjutsu? Did they really think she couldn't use it too? Boom. A shock wave burst outward, dispersing in all directions. Once the surge of energy dissipated, the enemy's figure was nowhere to be seen in the sky. Did they flee? Yaoi remained silent for a long moment before finally descending onto the rooftop of the Hokage building. Relay my orders. Declare a total manhunt for all members of the shinobi sect. To dare launch an open assault like this. The shinobi sect had now placed itself in direct opposition to Hidden Leaf Village. Their conflict had become irreconcilable, and a battle between them was now inevitable. Since that was the case, she might as well take control of the situation from the very start. And another thing. Immediately compile a list of 10 grave crimes committed by the shinobi sect and make them public in a proper manner. The accusations can be anything. Stealing an old lady's underwear, prying open a widow's doors and windows. Do I really need to teach you how to do this? Kaku Uchiha. You bitch. Who the hell are you trying to insinuate here? She had come to discuss countermeasures with Yaoi, yet the first thing she heard upon arrival was an indirect jab at herself. A widow? So what? Widows are popular. Kyosuke-sama happens to like this kind. Does that make you mad? Does it? Does it? Does it? Without paying the slightest attention to the woman's grumbling resentment. Because those perpetually unsatisfied types were always like this. Yaoi turned her gaze toward the distant sky. There, remnants of a fierce battle between two Super Kage-level shinobis could still be faintly seen. A true war is coming, she murmured. Indeed. Kaku replied. Standing at the peak of Hidden Leaf Village's power, the two women gazed upon the entire village, occasionally devising sinister strategies against their enemies. To stand against Hidden Leaf Village, the shinobi sect would undoubtedly seek alliances with other nations. In the worst-case scenario, Hidden Leaf Village might find itself pitted against 4 enemy forces simultaneously. That would be the ultimate test of their war capabilities. Compared to that, the conflict with Hidden Cloud's village had been nothing more than a mere skirmish. To the north of Hidden Leaf Village, Kaname was making his way toward Hidden Stone's village. Damn Hidden Leaf Village. Damn Uchiha. I will make sure you all perish without a trace. 1,000 years of solitude had not diminished the bloodthirsty malice within him. His brother's death had fueled his hatred, directing all his vengeance toward the entire Uchiha clan. Had it not been for the bond with Senju Hashirama, he never would have come to Hidden Leaf Village in the first place. But now, with all pretenses cast aside, he no longer had any reason to hold back. Retribution was all that mattered. After all, for reasons unknown, the Sage of Six Paths had ceased restraining anyone's actions. As long as the objective was achieved, they were free to act however they pleased. That damned brat, and that wretched little girl. When the time comes, I will personally send you both to the underworld. Boom. Before he could even finish his thoughts, an overwhelming force suddenly struck him. Like a skipping stone, Kaname was sent careening across the ground, bouncing repeatedly before tumbling far into the distance. By the time he finally came to a stop, his mouth was filled with blood and filth. His yellowed teeth nearly all knocked loose. You... Damn it. Who the hell? His eyes darted around in search of his assailant. Soon, his gaze landed on a treetop above him, where a man stood, looking down at him with utter disdain. You were just saying. You wanted to kill who? Madara Uchiha's voice carried the same arrogance as ever. Though his body was not in peak condition, he was still in far better shape than Hashirama. Thanks to the Outer Path Judo statue, which granted him an endless supply of life energy, maintaining his combat strength for a short period was no issue at all. Initially, he had no intention of getting involved. But then, a white zetsu he had cultivated through the Judo statue had brought him an urgent piece of intelligence. The shinobi sect had appeared in Hidden Leaf Village and had engaged in a fierce battle against the Hokage and Naruto Uchiha. That alone was of little concern. What truly set him off was that they had attacked Nagi's Uchiha. The memory of that beloved little princess, cherished by the entire Uchiha clan, surfaced in his mind. Madara's gaze darkened. If he didn't step in now, how could he ever be worthy of the title cool and handsome uncle? Kyosuke's son and daughter both looked up to him with admiration. And though Madara had no descendants of his own, he had long since come to see those two as his responsibility. Ones he must protect at all costs. He could turn a blind eye to many things. Wars could be fought if people wished for them. But there were lines that could never be crossed. Just like Hashirama, Madara had his own red lines. And whoever dared to cross them would die. Chapter 262, Kyosuke's reincarnation vessel Kaname died. Silently, without a trace. The shinobi sect had dispatched people to investigate from various angles, but despite their best efforts, they failed to uncover any conclusive evidence. Humphrey, it must have been the work of the Uchiha. Someone asserted with unwavering certainty. It made sense. Other than those who carried Indra's bloodline, reaching the power of the Kage was already the pinnacle that ordinary people could aspire to. Someone of that caliber could not have possibly been Kaname's match. Very well. It seems this is Hidden Leaf Village's answer to us. Just wait. You will regret the choices you have made today. In the 11th year of Hidden Leaf Village's founding, the shinobi sect envoys reached an agreement with both Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Sand Village. The two villages formed a military alliance, officially recognizing the shinobi sect as their acting authority in the shinobi world. The goal, at least on the surface, was straightforward: to put an end to the ongoing strife among nations and consolidate power in preparation for the looming threat from beyond the cosmos. Their slogans were grand and stirring, yet both Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village remained indifferent at heart. Otsutsuki? If the shinobi sect was so concerned, they were welcome to deal with that problem on their own. As for the two villages, their primary objective was still Hidden Leaf Village. The shinobi sect, however, chose to remain silent on the matter, neither objecting nor discouraging the two villages' ambitions. The truth was, despite their apparent urgency, they knew that the enemy's arrival was still a long way off. Even for the Otsutsuki clan, interstellar travel was a daunting endeavor. Crossing the vastness of space demanded immense time and effort. It was no exaggeration to say that such journeys often spanned several decades. Unless they possessed powerful space-time abilities related to their dujutsu, even the teleportation granted by the Kama mark made traversing the cosmos a significant challenge. The greatest obstacle in harvesting chakra fruits was not the battles, but the journey itself. Hidden Leaf Village, Hokage's office. This is this month's report. Kakuuchiha sighed deeply, her expression weary. Lately, she had been pushing herself to the limit, constantly dealing with the frequent conflicts erupting across different regions. Judging by the current situation, Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village had made their hostility clear. All they needed now was a suitable excuse to launch an attack. The shinobi sect, after all, prided itself on its doctrine of benevolence. Without a justifiable reason, they could not afford to recklessly initiate aggression against the Land of Fire. Doing so would complicate their efforts in governance after securing victory. This meant that, for the moment, Hidden Leaf Village still had time to prepare. Prepare for what? Naturally, they had to assess whether they could secure any valuable allies. Hidden Clouds Village was driven by greed, and Hidden Sand Village lacked compassion. Both were destined to be adversaries. However, Hidden Stones Village was a different story. Their Sushi Kage was not one to easily submit to another's authority. The first Sushi Kage, Ishikawa, was the man who had first established the Will of Stone. Even decades later, his unwavering resolve had guided Anoki back onto the right path. A leader of such caliber was anything but ordinary. The two women's plan was straightforward: to determine whether Hidden Stones Village could be swayed to their side. And even if they failed, they at least had to ensure that the Land of Earth did not become an enemy. Then there was Hidden Mist Village. That village had long since shut itself off from the world, refusing even Hidden Leaf Village's diplomatic envoys at its borders. The shinobi sect faced similar treatment. Given the vast ocean that separated them, along with Hidden Eddy Village serving as a buffer zone, there was little need to worry about Hidden Mist Village for the time being. 13 skirmishes in total. 5 involving Hidden Clouds Village, 8 instigated by Hidden Sand Village. They really aren't holding back. Yaoi remarked in an indifferent tone, as if the matter was of little consequence to her. At this stage, before the overwhelming strength of Hidden Leaf Village, neither Hidden Clouds Village nor Hidden Sand Village posed a real threat. The true enemy was the shinobi sect. Those individuals did not need to stain their hands with blood to kill. They were an insidious, formidable force, more dangerous than any shinobi army. Yaoi knew all too well that behind the shinobi sect, there was likely an even greater figure pulling the strings. Back during the chaos of the Chunin exams, Otsutsuki Ishiki had been pursuing an unknown individual. Piecing together the clues Kyosuke had provided in the past, Yaoi had fixed her attention on a particular legendary figure. None other than the Sage of Six Paths himself. Only he could command the shinobi sect's emergence. Only he could be the one directing them from the shadows, stirring up turmoil throughout the shinobi world. What a pity. Yaoi mused. Of all the mistakes you could have made, choosing to stand against Hidden Leaf Village was the gravest. The world today no longer belongs to you. As she remained lost in thought, Kakuuchiha coolly reminded her. Be careful. Not everyone in Hidden Leaf Village is willing to oppose the legendary shinobi sect. Oh? Are you saying that some within the village have already turned to the enemy? Of course. There is never a shortage of self-proclaimed clear-headed individuals who fancy themselves smarter than the rest. Abandoning their home, all for the sake of a so-called grand vision. Someone who cannot even love their own family. Do you really expect them to dedicate themselves to the shinobi world? You sound quite upset. Kaku Uchiha had every reason to be furious. Why would someone born into the Uchiha clan willingly lower themselves to serve as a lapdog for Senju Tobirama? The one she referred to as a dog was none other than Kagami Uchiha, the so-called prodigy of their clan who had long since pledged his allegiance to the Senju in secret. Lately, that man had become increasingly vocal, spreading the notion that the Senju were the true clan of love. And as for the Uchiha, according to him, they were nothing more than a group of narrow-minded family supremacists. To Kaku, he was nothing but a naive fool who had never experienced true hardship. Had he lived through the chaos of the Warring States period, he would never have uttered such ridiculous words about who truly embodied the spirit of love. The truth was simple, everything he had seen was merely what others had deliberately allowed him to see. Yet, he acted as if he had eyes sharper than any, as if he could perceive the true nature of the world. Every time Kaku saw him putting on such a self-righteous air, she felt a deep sense of disgust. If it weren't for Izuna stopping her, she would have dealt with that traitor herself long ago. Izuna is far more sensible than you, Yaoi remarked, her tone laced with sharpness. No matter how ruthless your methods may be, you will never be able to control people's thoughts. You can restrain their bodies, but can you shackle their minds? Kaku was silent for a moment before responding. That may be true, but leaving him alive to serve as a cautionary tale is far more valuable than simply killing him off. Yaoi interrupted. Hearing this, Kaku paused in thought, realizing that she had a point. Someone like Kagami Uchiha could never stir up a real storm. If anything, he might even serve as bait to lure out other hidden traitors within the clan. Yaoi sighed, casting a sidelong glance at the contemplative woman. It's a mystery how Kyosuke entrusted the Anbu to you. Humphrey. Obviously, it's because Lord Kyosuke trusts me and loves me. Kaku huffed, her previous irritation replaced with a smug sense of satisfaction. TSK. Yaoi clicked her tongue, shaking her head in amusement, as if she were looking at an ignorant summer insect trying to discuss ice. You bitch. Kaku growled, narrowing her eyes. Keep that up, and I'll beat you to a pulp. You? Yaoi smirked. A little slut who thinks about men all day. If you can't win, don't bother pretending you can. As if you don't have the same thoughts. Kaku shot back. The two women, as was their habit, exchanged verbal jabs for a while. However, they both had pressing matters to attend to, so they soon parted ways without escalating their banter into an actual fight. After Kaku left, Yaoi pondered for a moment before forming a shadow clone to handle official duties in her place. Meanwhile, her true body quietly slipped out of the village and made her way toward the space-time corridor leading to the moon. The moon, Tenseigan, energy vessel, Hiya. Hey. Ha. Inside a grand chamber, a group of young boys, no older than 7 or 8, were engrossed in intense training. The moment Yaoi stepped inside, they immediately gathered around her, excitedly chattering about their progress. If an outsider had been present, they would have been utterly dumbfounded. Despite their tender age, these boys possessed extraordinary strength, far beyond what was expected of children. The weakest among them were already at the level of Chunin, while the most exceptional ones boasted combat abilities rivaling that of Jonin. Had they been in the outside world, each of them would be considered a prodigy on par with Kakashi. Very good. Yaoi nodded approvingly. You haven't disappointed me. With that, she raised her hand. Come now, let me see how well you've adapted. As soon as she spoke, dark markings abruptly spread across the boys' bodies. Among the strongest of them, a distinct chakra wave radiated from their forms. One that was deeply familiar to Yaoi. Lord Kyosuke, she murmured, falling into momentary silence. The markings on their bodies. There was no mistaking it. They were identical to the Kama marks that originated from the Otsutsuki clan. However, unlike the original, these were derived from Kyosuke himself. This was his contingency plan for resurrection. Inspired by the precedent set by Otsutsuki Ishiki, Kyosuke had chosen to follow the same path. To be frank, this method was far more reliable than the reincarnation jutsu. Plug and play, with no risk of betrayal. In truth, if not for Kabuto and Black Zetsu meddling behind the scenes, Obito would never have even considered reviving Madara Uchiha in the original timeline. He had been too naive in his youth, but after experiencing countless schemes and betrayals, there was no way he hadn't realized that Madara had used him. By that point, however, he had already given up on the world. There was nothing left for him but to continue down the path he had been set upon. But Kyosuke wasn't willing to take such risks. Thus, he had spent 100,000 points to exchange for the Kama ability. A small price to pay. Once he gained the power to travel between the stars, he could simply erase an entire planet and reclaim the points with ease. Standing within the Tenseigan energy vessel, Yaoi watched the strongest of the boys with satisfaction. She knew these few individuals held the key to Kyosuke's return. Grow up quickly, she murmured. Her gaze then shifted to a mask hanging on the wall and a robed figure standing nearby. One who served as their instructor. It was a Shinigami mask, a relic stolen from the Uzumaki shrine years ago. Before his demise, Kyosuke had sealed his own soul within the mask, ensuring that no one could use him as a pawn for summoning impure world reincarnation. Only when the masked man had approached her did Yaoi fully comprehend the extent of Kyosuke's preparations. It was then that she finally understood why he had dedicated himself to the study of cloning. "You're here," the masked man said. His voice was calm and steady. "Did something happen?" "Yes." Yaoi nodded, not hesitating to relay everything that had been unfolding in the shinobi world. If there was anyone left whom she could trust completely, someone she could rely on without doubt, then it was undoubtedly the man standing before her. As for Kaku Uchiha, that sharp-tongued little slut had far too many personal concerns. She was too narrow-minded to be wholly dependable. At best, she counted as half an ally. "Shinobi sect, is it?" the masked man sneered. "A group of restless fools. You need not concern yourself with them. If they come at us with force, we will simply meet them head-on. Even if the 4 villages were to unite, they would still be no match for Hidden Leaf Village's current strength. As for Otsutsuki Hagoromo..." He paused briefly before continuing with certainty. "If my guess is correct, he has likely been affected by the mental corruption of the blackened entity. Otherwise, he would never have allowed the shinobi sect to act so recklessly. There's no need to worry about him. Until he finds a way to break through, the Sage of Six Paths will not act carelessly. He has already waited thousands of years. What difference do a few more decades make?" "I understand," Yaoi said, nodding. With this, she knew exactly what she needed to do next. This was the contingency plan Kyosuke had left her. An option for situations beyond her ability to handle. If she ever faced an insurmountable obstacle, she was to came to the moon and seek guidance from this mysterious black-robed figure. Even if he had no recollection of the past, he was, after all, a part of him. A fragment of his very being. And as such, he would instinctively know how to navigate the crises that threatened the shinobi world. That's right. The masked man. This entity born of yin-yang style was none other than the embodiment of Kyosuke's will. Kyosuke's clone, number 2. Chapter 263, Nagiza opens her eyes, defeats Hidden Mist Village, and kills Mizukage in the Land of Grass, in a secluded underground cave. Someone, please tell me. What exactly is the sensation of needing to relieve myself? It's like this. Oh, but I don't feel anything. By the way, do you, being an artificial human, also need to, relieve yourself? Of course, I have to eat. If I can eat, then I can definitely relieve myself. Then why not just eat poop and then relieve yourself afterward? Wouldn't that save on food? No, that's not possible. It takes time to produce poop. Well, then you can do it, and I'll eat it. Afterward, I'll relieve myself for you, and we'll never run out of food. We can live forever. You can't do that. True, I suppose. In a corner of the cave, standing before the massive outer path Jido statue, Madara Uchiha remained silent, barely containing the urge to strangle the two fools. It wasn't that he had no tolerance for such behavior, but the Guru clone of White Zetsu was quite special, and Madara was reluctant to dispose of him so casually. However, who could explain to him why Kyosuke's will, the very manifestation of his consciousness, had taken the form of a fool who could play along with Guru? Could it be that this clownish behavior was Kyosuke's hidden true nature? At that moment, Madara Uchiha couldn't help but wonder if that might indeed be the case. Not far ahead, two figures were engaged in a heated argument about bodily functions and poop, White Zetsu's clone, Guru, and Kyosuke's other incarnation. The third incarnation of his will, Kyosuke's clone number 3. By the way, if I wear you like this, you'll definitely feel it the next time I relieve myself. The third incarnation suggested, presenting an inventive and unsettling idea. Upon hearing this, Guru staggered back 2 steps, his hand trembling as he pointed at the third incarnation, exclaiming, You must be a genius. Hey. The third incarnation proudly placed his hands on his hips. Enough, both of you bastards, shut up. Madara snapped, finally losing his patience. If these two kept up with their nonsense, he swore he'd boil them alive. With the cave now quiet, Madara coughed lightly a few times, raising his gaze to the grim visage of the outer path Jido statue. This is the shell of the Tentails, a necessary vessel for condensing chakra fruit. Through this creature, Madara had cultivated white zetsu and gained access to numerous secrets across the ninja world. He was well aware that the shinobi sect was collecting the tailed beasts on a massive scale, and sooner or later, the enemies would bring their focus onto him. Because not only did he possess the shell of the ten tails, but within his own body, the dormant nine tails had been sealed away. During his battle against Otsutsuki Ishiki, Kyosuke had perished, and Hashirama had pushed his life energy to the absolute limit, sustaining wounds that were not light. The nine tails chakra had been fully expended, and without the need for Ganjutsu, its will had fallen into a deep slumber, showing no signs of awakening. Had it not been for the outer path Judo statue's power extending his life, Madara knew his condition would have been no better than Hashirama's. He wouldn't have had the strength to deal with that meddlesome fool from the shinobi sect. Madara raised a hand to touch his Tomoe Rinnegan, sighing deeply as his mind wandered through the memories of the first half of his life. You two idiots. His gaze swept over White Zetsu's true form and Guruguru. Madara knew he needed to prepare for his eventual resurrection. Through the bestowed power of Yin, he had came to understand the nature of the Six Paths Sage's strength. While perhaps not as strong as Otsutsuki Kaguya, if the sage's true body were to be fully revived, Madara believed its power would not be inferior to Otsutsuki Ishiki's. An absolute peak Six Paths level existence. Perhaps even stronger than the latter. Faced with the Six Paths Sage, Madara knew he stood no chance of winning. If the outer path Judo statue was lost, it was lost. But these Tomoe Rinnegan? He could not allow his enemies to take them from him. If it's hopeless, I'll have to ask Yaoi for help. Madara thought, fully aware of Yaoi's true abilities. He had even suspected that the method Kyosuke used for resurrection was likely tied to her. There was a time when he doubted Kyosuke's constant affairs with women. Now, looking back, he realized just how short-sighted he had been. Guruguru, stop being foolish. Go to Hidden Leaf Village. Madara commanded coldly. Upon hearing this, Guruguru reluctantly slid off the third incarnation, realizing it was time to return and enjoy the simple pleasure of relieving himself once more. Wait for me, don't you dare relieve yourself in my absence. Don't worry, that's a promise I'll keep. Oh. I understand now. This is what people mean by bonds. Madara Uchiha could only stare in disbelief. One way or another, at least his otaku-like life wasn't entirely boring. 11th year of the Hidden Leaf Village, mid-year conflicts in the ninja world were becoming more intense, gradually evolving into localized skirmishes. Compared to the long-standing grudges with Hidden Clouds Village, it was Hidden Sand Village that displayed a greater desire for aggression. At this moment, the members of Kyosuke's team were all gathered in the western part of the Land of Fire, standing watch in case Hidden Sand Village decided to launch an unexpected attack. As for Hidden Clouds Village, there was little to worry about. Senju Rama himself had stationed forces in the area. Over the years, his strength had steadily increased, making any conflict with the Raikage unlikely. The most important factor, however, was that Hidden Leaf Village's military might have grown exponentially. Each year, roughly 1,000 students graduated from the academy, with more than 80% of them continuing their path as ninjas. By now, the Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Academy had produced over 10,000 geinin, forming a powerful force capable of making the entire shinobi world tremble. Furthermore, with the implementation of Kyosuke's reward-based population-boosting policy, Hidden Leaf Village's population had been growing rapidly, and the number of graduates each year had steadily increased. This year alone, over 1,500 students were expected to graduate. When factoring in the older generation of retired ninjas, the potential manpower of Hidden Leaf Village had, almost unnoticed, surpassed 20,000 ninjas. Without even considering the higher-level combatants, Hidden Leaf Village was undeniably the strongest village in the entire shinobi world. With Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village unable to match Hidden Leaf Village's power, they were not in a position to challenge the village. As for Hidden Stones Village, they had yet to take a definitive stance. The Sushi Kage was a cunning and shrewd individual who would not easily fall for the so-called promises of the shinobi sect. If they were truly that powerful, they would have simply destroyed Hidden Leaf Village themselves rather than waste time with negotiations. In the end, it was clear that they simply lacked the ability to do so. Until the situation became clearer, Hidden Stones Village would not easily enter the battlefield. As long as the Sushi Kage remained inactive, the shinobi sect would not dare to recklessly start a large-scale war. Hidden Leaf Village had anticipated all of this. However, no one expected the Hidden Mist Village, located far across the seas, to suddenly make a move. In August, Hidden Mist Village suddenly dispatched a large number of ninjas to launch a surprise attack on the land of the Whirlpool. The elderly Uzumaki Ashina led his forces to engage in battle. Though he was able to barely fend off the attacks from the first Mizukage, the damage to his clan was severe, and it soon became clear that they were unable to hold their ground for much longer. With no other choice, he sent a plea for reinforcements to Hidden Leaf Village, hoping that his two daughters could send additional troops. But before the message even reached Hidden Leaf Village, it was intercepted. "Humphrey, you still think you can ask for help?" Senju Tobirama muttered coldly as he shredded the letter in his hand. "Back then, you caused my uncle's death and escaped without a care for the consequences. Today, it's time for you to pay for that, Uzumaki Ashina. If the land of the whirlpool were to fall, Hidden Leaf Village would undoubtedly fall into chaos. Neither the Senju nor the Uchiha clans could tolerate Hidden Mist Village's actions abroad. At that point, war would certainly break out, and only then would Tobirama have a chance to regain control of the situation. As for the consequences, from Tobirama's perspective, Hidden Leaf Village already held the status of a dominant power. Even the shinobi sect could not shake its foundation. Defeating the allied shinobi forces would not be difficult, but getting the Senju to the top was a far more difficult task. Without weakening the Uchiha clan's power, he would likely never see that opportunity. For this reason, Tobirama was willing to take some risks. However, he never imagined that Hidden Leaf Village would still receive the news. The information had been intercepted by White Zetsu, who, on his way to Hidden Leaf Village, discreetly relayed the message to the Hokage. Understanding the urgency of the situation, Yaoi quickly mobilized the forces and decided to inform Uzumaki Mido. "You damn fools." Upon learning of the situation, Mido was furious. She immediately led the elite ninjas from her clan to the land of the whirlpool to provide assistance. The current Uchiha clan had grown far stronger than in the Warring States period. At the age of 10, most of them awakened the Sharingan, and by 15, they could evolve it to the 3 Tomoe level. Elite Jonins were everywhere, and while their numbers were not overwhelming, their combat prowess was unparalleled. The Uchiha clan's reputation as the strongest clan in the Land of Fire was certainly no exaggeration. By the end of August, Uchiha reinforcements arrived and launched a counterattack against the forces of the Mist Village. In September, Hidden Mist Village sent reinforcements, bringing their main forces to bear. All the bloodline clans sent their strongest elite ninjas. In one particular ambush, the Mizukage's team successfully infiltrated the enemy's rear, heavily wounding Mido and decisively defeating Uzumaki Ashina. At a crucial moment, Nagi's Uchiha, who had followed the reinforcements, awakened her Mengekyo Sharingan. With the help of her unusual eye technique, she managed to hold off the Hidden Mist Village forces until reinforcements arrived. Though the situation was dire, the Uchiha clan's forces were in high spirits after the battle. The reason was simple: another Mengekyo Sharingan had been awakened within the Uchiha clan. As expected of Lord Kyosuke's children, their talents were extraordinary. After Haruto's victory over Tobirama, he had already begun showing signs of becoming the strongest of this generation. Now, even Nagiza had awakened her Mengekyo Sharingan. A clan with 2 such talents was not to be underestimated. As for the reinforcements from Hidden Mist Village, there was no need for concern. The head of the Uchiha clan, Izuna, had already led a large force, and more importantly, the clan's elite special forces had been mobilized. Lady Mido's severe injury had completely enraged the entire Uchiha clan. The elite unit, trained for years in the moon base by Kyosuke himself, now appeared on the battlefield. Each member of this formidable unit had mastered the 3 Tomoe Sharingan and was well versed in the form and nature transformation of the Chidori technique. Additionally, they were marked with cursed seals, allowing them to tap into a diluted version of natural energy. Though the force numbered only slightly over 100, not one among them was weaker than an elite Jonin in terms of combat ability. From the moment they arrived on the battlefield, the Uchiha clan had completely seized the upper hand. On the other side, the Hidden Mist Village forces were being driven back relentlessly. Their 3,000-strong ninja army was collapsing in disarray, and the second wave of reinforcements was still on its way. According to Yaoi's instructions, there were only 2 options. Either avoid battle entirely or annihilate the enemy without mercy. There could be no room for hesitation. The enemy could not be allowed to regroup. If Hidden Mist Village joined forces with the Shinobi Sect Alliance, the situation would grow far more complicated. Aware of the urgency, Izuna gathered his main forces and launched a swift, decisive raid before the enemy reinforcements could arrive. The strike was overwhelmingly effective. In the early part of the 12th year of the Hidden Leaf Village calendar, Izuna led the Uchiha clan in a surprise attack on Hidden Mist Village's stronghold, cutting off the Mizukage's retreat. With the combined power of the 2 Mengekyo Sharingan, they swiftly killed the Mizukage and his entire Anbu squad. This event marked the first time in the history of the ninja world that a Kage had died on the battlefield. In an instant, the entire shinobi world was shaken. Chapter 264, Black Zetsu Saves His Mother, Part 2. With Hidden Mist Village's retreat, the immediate crisis facing the Land of Whirlpools had finally subsided. However, the cost was severe, as countless Uzumaki clansmen had perished or sustained grievous injuries. and the nation's strength had diminished by at least 30%. If another enemy were to invade, even Hidden Leaf Village might not be able to send reinforcements in time. Aware of the ever-looming threat posed by Hidden Mist Village, Mido made a firm decision. She would remain in the land of whirlpools, standing resolute beside her daughter to safeguard their homeland. A handful of clansmen stayed behind to maintain the settlement, while the majority, under Izuna Uchiha's leadership, made their way back to Hidden Leaf Village. Rest assured, as long as I am here, Hidden Mist Village will not be allowed to step foot into the land of fire. Mido promised Hidden Leaf Village with unwavering determination. I will also stay and assist my mother. Nagi's Uchiha expressed her wish. If her brother was defending Hidden Leaf Village from Hidden Sand Village, then she would stand beside her mother to safeguard the land of whirlpools. Their family was now divided between two battlefronts, one confronting Hidden Sand Village and the other resisting Hidden Mist Village. Their contributions to the war effort were beyond dispute, ensuring that no one could criticize them for negligence. During this conflict, her mother had suffered severe injuries. In the heat of battle, little Cutie, overwhelmed by desperation, had unexpectedly awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Fortunately, under Mido's patient guidance, she was not consumed by the negative emotions that often accompanied such an awakening. Nevertheless, she had become noticeably more composed than before. Perhaps she had finally realized that she, too, bore the responsibility of protecting her family. Very well, I leave the matter of Hidden Mist Village in your hands, Izuna said before leading his forces away, leaving the mother and daughter to aid Uzumaki Ashina in cleaning up the aftermath of the war. Hidden Leaf Village Year 12, March. Hidden Mist Village held a grand funeral for the first Mizukage. Throughout the proceedings, they repeatedly lodged official protests, demanding that Hidden Leaf Village surrender those responsible for his death. Their demands were utterly absurd. Yaoi did not even bother to acknowledge them. The moment she received the so-called official letter, she crumpled it into a ball and tossed it into the trash without a second thought. Surrender their people? If not for the current complexities of the situation, Hidden Leaf Village would have every reason to launch an invasion of the Land of Water for their blatant betrayal of an ally. By mid-March, with Hidden Leaf Village remaining unresponsive, Hidden Sand Village grew increasingly restless. Ritu, the Kazekage, personally issued a public statement, demanding that Hidden Leaf Village formally apologize for its actions in the Land of Whirlpools and hand over the so-called murderers. Izuna Uchiha and Nachi's Uchiha. If Hidden Leaf Village refused, Hidden Sand Village would reserve the right to take military action. It was a blatant distortion of the truth and an unparalleled display of shamelessness. To make matters worse, the Raikage immediately echoed these sentiments, seizing the opportunity to launch an aggressive smear campaign against Hidden Leaf Village. Despite Hidden Leaf Village's rescue efforts, the narrative had been twisted beyond recognition. Many now believe that the Uchiha clan, driven by old grudges, had deliberately orchestrated the downfall of the Land of Whirlpools under the guise of intervention. This method of deception was crude and unsubtle, yet disturbingly effective. People were quick to pass judgment, stubbornly clinging to their preconceived notions regardless of any counter-arguments. It is the nature of fools to hastily form conclusions and refuse to let them go. The Raikage, despite his outwardly brash and straightforward demeanor, had a keen understanding of human nature. By manipulating public perception in this way, even if Hidden Leaf Village were to one day conquer the Land of Lightning, the so-called defenders of truth would continue to resist them, willing to lay down their lives in opposition to perceived tyranny. It was a cunning move, undeniably sinister in its implications. Yet, Yaoi simply did not care. In response to the relentless accusations from Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village, she issued Hidden Leaf Village's official reply: Hidden Leaf Village does not fear war. If you wish to fight, we shall meet you on the battlefield. This resolute declaration left no room for doubt. To anyone with a discerning eye, war was now inevitable. Whether Hidden Leaf Village could emerge victorious against the combined might of Hidden Sand Village and Hidden Clouds Village remained uncertain. Yet the greatest concern was not these two villages alone, but the force lurking behind them. Should the Shinobi sect choose to intervene, Hidden Leaf Village would find itself at a severe disadvantage in terms of high-level combat power. Winning this war would be an immense challenge. Hidden Leaf Village Year 12, late April. Without any prior declaration, Hidden Clouds Village launched a sudden invasion, deploying a massive force to storm the Land of Fire's borders in an attempt to catch Hidden Leaf Village off guard at the very start of the war. Unfortunately for them, the defense was spearheaded by the Senju clan. Against the renowned master of battlefield tactics, Senju Tobirama, the Raikage's scheming proved utterly ineffective. Summoning, impure world reincarnation. Possessing unparalleled speed, the Raikage sought to overwhelm his foes, but Tobirama countered by summoning, impure world reincarnation bodies marked with flying thunder god seals to engage him. What ensued was a battle of sheer speed, with the two warriors clashing in a high-stakes contest of agility and reflexes. Their combat was so intense that ordinary shinobi dared not even approach the battlefield. Meanwhile, the main forces of Hidden Cloud's village surged forward like a tidal wave, relying on their overwhelming numbers to secure victory. Thus began a colossal battle involving over 15,000 shinobi, one of the largest conflicts in the shinobi world history. Summoning technique, Monkey King, Inma. Fighting alongside his teacher, Sarutobi Hiruzen demonstrated the immense strength that would one day earn him the title of the third Hokage. Through sheer willpower and relentless combat prowess, he proved beyond doubt that he was in no way inferior to Haruto Uchiha. Damn it, this guy fights like he doesn't care about his own life. A young and handsome Denzo gritted his teeth in frustration. Lacking sufficient strength, he could only struggle to keep up, providing support from behind. More than once, he had the urge to charge forward and prove his worth, but when the critical moment arrived, he always hesitated at the last second. Damn it all. Kagami Uchiha glanced at Denzo, noting the frustration on his face, but remained silent. He continued playing the role of an assistant, fully aware that his importance could never compare to that of Hiruzen. After all, it was Hiruzen whom Obirama truly valued most. If there was any hope of changing Hidden Leaf Village's future, it would have to come from Hiruzen. Hidden Leaf Village Year 12, Mega Battle with Hidden Cloud's village was fierce. The enemy had dispatched over 10,000 shinobi, while Hidden Leaf Village had sent only around 5,000, the majority of whom belonged to the Senju clan. Yet, the Senju of the forest possessed extraordinary strength. Even with fewer numbers, they could still hold the Hidden Cloud's village army at bay. However, the key to achieving victory did not lie in this battle. It was in the west, where Hidden Sand Village was making its move. As the war against Hidden Cloud's village raged on, Hidden Sand Village mobilized its forces and advanced toward Hidden Leaf Village's western borders. In response, Hidden Leaf Village reinforced its army with 2,000 more shinobi, bringing the total to 6,000. This force then launched a counterattack, pushing deep into the land of rivers. As the commander, Izuna had never been fond of passive defense. He much preferred to take the initiative and strike the enemy first. This trait was shared by the entire Uchiha clan. Among them, Haruto led the elite forces left behind by his father, wielding them like a razor-sharp spear that tore through the enemy ranks. By the time Hidden Sand Village realized what had happened, Haruto's army had already pierced straight through their formation. Ha 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 ha. This is exhilarating. He roared with laughter, finally experiencing the sheer thrill of unrestrained battlefield combat. His father's so-called Invincible Legion was truly as formidable as the legends claimed. Their mastery of lightning-fast surprise attacks was unparalleled, executed with such precision that it was nothing short of an art form. Although Haruto was the nominal commander, in truth, he was still learning the intricacies of warfare from his seasoned subordinates. They taught him invaluable battlefield knowledge, such as when to launch a surprise attack, how to recognize a well-disguised trap with a single glance, and the subtle shifts in enemy formations that signaled impending danger. Through first-hand experience, Haruto had finally grasped the true nature of war. Thanks to the unparalleled performance of the Invincible Legion, Hidden Leaf Village's western forces, despite having only half the numbers of Hidden Sand Village's army, launched an overwhelming assault, crushing the enemy through sheer strategic brilliance. When news of this astonishing feat spread, the entire ninja world was left in shock. A single thought lingered in the minds of all who heard it. Was Hidden Leaf Village's military strength truly this terrifying? Even with two major hidden villages joining forces, they still couldn't gain the upper hand. It became evident that even without the god of shinobi, Hidden Leaf Village retained the strength to maintain its position as the most powerful hidden village in the world. While tensions at the front lines ran high, the Hokage, Yaoi, remained remarkably composed at the rear. Despite the ongoing chaos, the battles between the three great factions had yet to escalate into an all-out war. For now, they remained within the phase of probing attacks, a measured testing of each other's capabilities rather than an attempt at total annihilation. From the very beginning, Hidden Leaf Village had never regarded the alliance of the two hidden villages as a true threat. The real enemy was not the obvious adversary standing in the open, but the unseen forces lurking in the shadows. The Shinobi sect. Yaoi understood this reality all too well. As long as she and the hidden Madara Uchiha remained passive, the Shinobi sect would not make a direct move in the war. Those self-proclaimed righteous hypocrites would not dare to launch a large-scale massacre against Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi. The only measure they could take was to restrict the involvement of Super Shadow-level combatants, ensuring that such warriors could not wantonly slaughter opponents on the battlefield. She herself counted as one of these powerhouses. Madara Uchiha, without a doubt, was another key target in their sights. Beyond them, there was also a strong possibility that Haruto would become the primary focus of their countermeasures. As for the village itself, it was in no immediate danger. Even if the worst came to pass, and Hashirama, the half-dead camel, were to make his move, Yaoi highly doubted that the shinobi sect possessed anyone capable of standing against him. In the end, this war would be decided by Hidden Leaf Village's fundamental military strength. Since the outcome hinged on that, there was little reason for Yaoi to dwell on matters beyond her control. Rather than wasting time and energy on pointless concerns, she chose to dedicate herself to her research, utilizing the shadow clone research method to accelerate the completion of her current projects. That had been her plan, at least, until an unexpected guest arrived at her doorstep. The visitor was escorted by the leader of the Fuma clan. Yaoi had only a vague understanding of this particular existence. She was aware that the strange entity known as Black Zetsu had once collaborated with Kyosuke. Even now, there remained a possibility that some unknown agreement still bound them together. A sinister chuckle echoed through the room. Having trouble dealing with the shinobi sect, are you? If you desire it, I can take care of those troublesome pests for you. My price is simple. I need you to use the Golden Wheel reincarnation explosion to slice that bothersome moon in half. That was Black Zetsu's proposition. At present, its plan to gather the tail beasts had completely collapsed. Forget the fact that its existence had been exposed. Its ultimate target, Madara Uchiha, had now ascended to a level comparable to the Sage of Six Paths, all without even relying on the 10 tails. Black Zetsu could not help but suspect that Heigoromo Otsutsuki had done this intentionally. It was as if he had deliberately ensured that the plan would never succeed. After all, if Madara had already achieved this level of power through his own means, why would he take the immense risk of absorbing the 10 tails, knowing full well that his body could be possessed by an external will? Without a clear method to carry out its original resurrection plan, Black Zetsu had no choice but to explore alternative measures. While observing Yaoi's battles from the shadows, a new idea suddenly took shape. It would leverage the power of the Tenseigan to break the seal in the simplest and most destructive way possible. By utterly destroying the moon itself. Even without a complete 10 tails, Kaguya's strength might not return to its absolute peak. However, she would still possess a divine flame-level body, an existence beyond the limits of ordinary life forms. She might not be able to fight effectively. But at the very least, she would be indestructible. As for how she would regain her full strength, there was always another option. In the worst-case scenario, mother and child could simply flee the Earth and search for another planet where they could cultivate a new divine tree. Black Zetsu distinctly recalled that Ishiki had hidden a small 10 tails somewhere. With Kaguya's extraordinary mastery of space-time ninjutsu, tracking down Ishiki's secret dimension would not be a difficult task. It was, by all means, a solid plan. Unfortunately, Black Zetsu had severely miscalculated one thing. Kaguya's obsession. After suffering such a humiliating defeat on Earth, Otsutsuki Kaguya would never simply run away. If she were truly freed, she would inevitably rekindle her battle against her two beloved sons, and the outcome was already predetermined. She would without a doubt be sealed away once more. The divine flame-level body, while granting an immortal existence, came at a heavy price. Maintaining such a form required an immense amount of chakra. That was why all Otsutsuki sealed the 10 tails within themselves as an endless power source. Without the 10 tails functioning as a battery, Kaguya would be unable to unleash her true strength. Her combat experience was already lacking to begin with. Without her full power, she would only fall faster. Because of this, Black Zetsu had sought to flee the planet and wait out the lifespans of its enemies. Then, one day in the distant future, when all of them had long since turned to dust, it and its mother would return once more. Chapter 265, 60 years ahead of time, the shocking emergence of scientific ninja tools. Oh, is that so? Contrary to Black Zetsu's expectations, the Hokage did not seem particularly interested. She must be young and ignorant, unaware of the hidden power within the shinobi sect, otherwise, she would not remain so composed. Having convinced himself of this, Black Zetsu continued. The shinobi sect has existed for thousands of years, accumulating a depth of knowledge beyond what outsiders can imagine. There's no need to mention the Sage of Six Paths and his brother. The true individuals you should be wary of are those who devoted themselves to Asura's teachings, willingly choosing to remain within the shinobi sect for a lifetime. Perhaps fearing that he might frighten her, Black Zetsu paused momentarily before adding. Of course, there's no need for you to be alarmed. The Six Paths Sage sealed the shinobi sect using the Toki no Afuda, Talisman of Time, allowing those people to survive for 1,000 years. With my assistance, dealing with them won't be difficult. However, that depends on you assisting me in fulfilling my wish. Oh, I see. So, tell me your answer, woman. A green truth-seeking ball condensed in the air, transforming into the shape of an ice sphere. Without any warning, Yaoi struck out at Black Zetsu. I find you quite interesting. Why don't you lie down on my operating table, and we can have a proper conversation? Boom. The truth-seeking ball pierced through Black Zetsu, pinning him firmly to the floor. No matter how much he struggled, it was in vain. Black Zetsu knew all too well what kind of person this woman was, a formidable scientist who had once devoted herself to the revival of Onotsutsuki. If he were to end up on her operating table, he would rather be sealed by the Sage of Six Paths himself. What a pity. With a low, sinister chuckle, Black Zetsu's body suddenly burst apart, willingly discarding its physical form. Yet, his voice still echoed throughout the office. You've angered me, woman. Hidden Leaf Village shall now face the wrath of Kaguya's third son, the scribe of the shinobi world's history. Black Zetsu. With a wave of her hand, Yaoi completely erased all traces he had left behind. A few simple yin-style techniques, perhaps enough to deceive others, but before her, such tricks were nothing more than parlor tricks. The so-called scribe of the ninja world's history. How absurd. He couldn't even rescue his own mother, yet he dared to boast. In truth, Yaoi had been briefly tempted at first. But after careful consideration, she realized that while the shinobi sect operated with some restraints, Kaguya was a true existential threat to the entire shinobi world. If she were to aid Black Zetsu, the consequences for Kaguya were uncertain, but Hidden Leaf Village would undoubtedly face the full force of the shinobi sect's wrath. Even if victory were possible, it would likely be a Pyrrhic one. At the very least, Yaoi had no intention of allowing such a scenario to unfold. Besides, if freeing Kaguya were truly possible, Kyosuke would have done it long ago. There had to be something she wasn't aware of. And if that were the case, capturing Black Zetsu would be far more valuable instead. Such a peculiar life form would surely be invaluable for her research. Just wait a little longer, it won't be long now. Once I complete the Lord's assigned project, every threat will be effortlessly neutralized. Yaoi brimmed with confidence. Only she understood the true groundbreaking nature of the gifts her Lord had bestowed. To put it simply, they were inventions far ahead of their time, innovations that should not have existed in the shinobi world for another 60 years. However, once the technology was fully refined, its impact on ordinary shinobi would be immeasurable. At that point, when it came to the strength of lower and mid-tier combatants, no force in the entire shinobi world would be able to rival Hidden Leaf Village. Hyuga Clan Base, underground secret laboratory within the vast experimental area, 200 shadow clones were spread across the facility. Some monitored data, others adjusted equipment, while others personally tested the effects of various ninjutsu. Yet, they all shared a single trait: they were all shadow clones of Yaoi herself. One woman alone was conducting research that would typically require an entire team to accomplish. From her initial clueless approach to the verge of a major breakthrough, she had accomplished in just a few years what would have taken decades in the original timeline. Yes, Yaoi's research focus was on the application of scientific ninja tools. Given the ongoing war, her primary emphasis was on chakra capacitor-type devices. In essence, these were portable machines that stored ninjutsu scrolls. By activating the chakra capacitor, one could instantly release the stored jutsu, an incredibly efficient and convenient method that eliminated the need for hand seals. Several months ago, Hidden Leaf Village had already begun mass-producing ninjutsu scrolls. These scrolls contained a vast array of high-level techniques, including Chidori, the Bringer of Darkness technique, the Fire Style, Great Fireball, and the Water Dragon Bullet. Even Hashirama himself, intrigued by the concept, had personally contributed by creating several wood-style scrolls for distribution. Yes, the idea of sealing deep forest emergence into a scroll was indeed both fascinating and terrifying. If unleashed in battle, it would surely take the enemy by surprise. Now, all that remained was fine-tuning the process. Determined to ensure that every Hidden Leaf Village shinobi could unleash powerful jutsu without hand seals, Yaoi had devoted herself to this endeavor with relentless determination, refusing to rest until she achieved success. And once her experiments were complete, that would mark the true beginning of an era-changing revolution. August, Year 12 of Hidden Leaf Village. Hidden Clouds Village and Hidden Sand Village continued to mobilize their forces, determined to crush Hidden Leaf Village in one decisive strike. Meanwhile, Haruto Uchiha, whose strength had grown tremendously, rampaged across the battlefield in his full-body Susanoo, leaving countless casualties in his wake. However, just as he was reveling in his overwhelming power, a representative of the shinobi sect appeared before him, declaring that forces beyond conventional means were not permitted to interfere in the war. In other words, he was too strong and had to leave the battlefield. Naturally, Haruto refused to comply, and a fierce battle ensued. The outcome? One dead, one severely wounded. To prevent a second assassination attempt by the shinobi sect, Haruto's subordinates forcibly escorted him back to Hidden Leaf Village. His injuries this time were severe. Even with the regenerative abilities of a sage body, he would need a long period of recuperation to fully recover. Yaoi, however, was more concerned that the shinobi sect's next move would likely be a death strike. Meanwhile, on the western battlefield, with Haruto forced to retreat, the next to take the stage was Izuna Uchiha. This man had concealed his true strength well. If Haruto hadn't been forced to withdraw, the world might never have known that Izuna, too, could awaken the full-body Susanoo. The Uchiha were truly terrifying. Once again, the shinobi sect dispatched their agents. Hidden Sand Village had eagerly anticipated the total annihilation of Hidden Leaf Village's remaining forces at the hands of the shinobi sect. Instead, they were met with a chilling revelation. One after another, 3 separate groups of elite agents were sent out, yet all of them vanished without a trace, just like Kan named before them. They perished in complete silence, without so much as a whisper of resistance. By Hidden Leaf Village's shinobi rank classification, even the weakest among these agents stood at the peak Kage level, while some had already surpassed that threshold, ascending to Super Kage level strength. Yet, even if they had been caught off guard, it was inconceivable for them to perish so silently, without a single struggle, without even a trace of resistance. There were only 2 possible explanations for such an outcome. First, the enemy's strength was overwhelmingly superior. Not only were the agents unable to resist, but they didn't even have the chance to flee. Second, the enemy possessed an ability of unparalleled terror, one capable of killing without being seen. If that were not the case, there should have been at least some commotion before their deaths. The shinobi sect had long since stepped into the world, and its agents had already developed a profound understanding of the current shinobi landscape. Given the circumstances, the mastermind behind these events was not difficult to deduce. It must be him. Madara Uchiha. There is no other possibility. To stand against the Otsutsuki clan. His power is nothing short of monstrous. Indeed. Unless our leaders awaken, we are no match for him. Forget it. Let's temporarily abandon our pursuit of Izuna Uchiha. A mere pair of Mangekyo Sharinganais won't amount to much. Agreed. I concur. And just like that, the threat looming over Izuna mysteriously vanished. He himself likely remained unaware that the shinobi sect had once secretly considered targeting him. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and the year drew to a close once more. Yet the dark clouds of war still hung heavy over the land of fire, casting a deep shadow over the hearts of its people. Even ordinary civilians found themselves trapped in a constant state of fear and unease. Just as everyone was preparing to welcome the new year, unsettling news arrived from the land of whirlpools. Suspected Hidden Mist Village spies had been spotted frequently roaming the surrounding areas. In the 13th year of Hidden Leaf Village's founding, Hidden Mist Village had launched surprise attacks against the land of whirlpools for 2 consecutive years. With the position of the second Mizukage still undecided, the reason behind these assaults was clear. They were following the directives of the shinobi sect. Whoever achieved the most significant battlefield success would be granted the right to rule Hidden Mist Village as its second Mizukage. With such a selection process in place, which shinobi clan would not give everything they had to seize the opportunity. Waging war against outsiders was far preferable to descending into internal conflict. This was a belief shared by all the competing factions. As for the justification for the war, on the surface, it appeared to be an assault on a land of whirlpools. In reality, however, it was an effort to establish a direct path to Hidden Leaf Village. As long as Hidden Eddy Village stood, Hidden Mist Village would never be able to extend its influence toward Hidden Leaf Village. Understanding this, Hidden Leaf Village had no intention of sitting idly by and watching the land of whirlpools fall. Soon, a combined force of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans was mobilized. Since Hidden Mist Village's forces mainly consisted of bloodline limit clans, shinobi with formidable individual strength but limited numbers, there was no need to deploy a massive army. A contest of individual strength? Hidden Leaf Village had never feared such a challenge. Not only did they have the Uchiha and Senju clans, but the Hyuga clan had also undergone a dramatic transformation, now standing as equals alongside the other 2 great families. Moreover, the Uzumaki clan's shinobi possessed strength far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. In this regard, there was little cause for concern. However, despite Hidden Leaf Village's unparalleled might, they now faced the combined forces of Hidden Sand Village, Hidden Clouds Village, and Hidden Mist Village. No matter how powerful they were, the toll of war and the mounting casualties could not be ignored. Fortunately, Yaoi was not one to sit idly by. Hidden Stones Village had given a clear promise that they would not intervene in the conflict, on the condition that Hidden Leaf Village would aid them in developing their ninja academy and incentive-based training programs. To put it simply, they sought to replicate Hidden Leaf Village's operational system and learn from its successful experiences. In times like these, refraining from aiding the enemy was already an act of goodwill. Yaoi had no reason to refuse the Sushi Kage's request. After all, she was not Madara Uchiha. She would not welcome the Sushi Kage's delegation only to subdue the second and third Sushi Kage in one swift move. That would be nothing less than a deliberate act of provocation. Beyond Hidden Stone's village's neutrality, Hidden Rain Village had firmly chosen to stand with Hidden Leaf Village. Their stance was simple: whoever dared to use their land as a battlefield, they would fight against them. On this matter, Hidden Leaf Village had shown great restraint and respect, never overstepping its boundaries. Hidden Rain Village appreciated allies who understood the importance of such discretion. Time continued to pass, and after another half-year of relentless warfare, the tides of battle remained unpredictable. There was no clear victor in sight. Yet, unbeknownst to the shinobi world, during this very period, a groundbreaking technological achievement had been successfully developed. In the 13th year of Hidden Leaf Village's founding, in the month of July, scientific ninja tools were officially introduced in Hidden Leaf Village. Chapter 266, Apologies, but the times have changed. The western region of the Land of Fire, along the southern coastal areas bordering the Land of Rivers. Deep within the dark, damp forest, a Hidden Leaf Village squad was desperately trying to evade pursuit. However, their situation was growing increasingly dire. "Captain, we can't escape. The enemies behind us are closing in fast." "Report. There's a Sand Village puppet squad blocking the path ahead." It was evident that the situation was spiraling out of control, tilting completely against Hidden Leaf Village's favor. "Damn it." The squad leader scanned his surroundings, his expression growing darker with each passing second. "It looks like we have no way out." His strength was nothing exceptional. He was barely at the level of an elite chunin. To make matters worse, his subordinates were just a group of fresh graduates from the Ninja Academy. By all logic, they shouldn't have drawn this much enemy attention. It was clear that they had, by sheer misfortune, stumbled upon a force in the middle of executing a major operation. Realizing there was no hope of escape, the team leader made a decision. If they were going to die here, then he would at least take one of the enemies with him. But what pained him the most was that these young shinobi, who had placed their trust in him, would have to perish as well. Just as he steeled himself for a final stand, three of the young genin suddenly exchanged glances, mischievous grins creeping onto their faces. "Ah, that's right. We can use that. Yeah, it's finally time to let it shine. Hee, to be honest, I've been itching to try it out." Seeing their expressions, the squad captain was taken aback. A glimmer of hope flickered in his mind. Could it be that his subordinates had some kind of hidden trump card? "Which one should we use first?" "Let's start with the shadow clone jutsu. That should even out the numbers." Before the captain could fully grasp their conversation, the three genin quickly formed a single-handed seal. The next moment, a faint mist engulfed the area. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, the battlefield was flooded with 30 shadow clones. The tables had turned. What the fuck? The captain's jaw nearly hit the ground. He had personally exchanged merit points for the shadow clone jutsu before. It was an invaluable tool for reconnaissance, setting traps, and luring enemies. But even with all his experience, he had never managed to summon more than 10 clones at once. And when he did, their power was so diluted that they were weaker than genin-level shinobi. Yet these three, their clones didn't seem to be suffering from any noticeable drop in strength. What in the world was going on? On the other side of the battlefield, the three genin, seeing their clones materialize successfully, immediately grew excited. Hee, watch this. Water Dragon Bullet Technique. Without forming a single seal, a massive water dragon surged forth, crashing into the enemy ranks and submerging them in its torrents. My turn. Great Dragon Fire Technique. A colossal fire dragon roared through the air, incinerating the incoming enemies in an instant. Now me. Chidori Sharp Spear. A 4-meter-long lightning blade pierced through the ranks, skewering several enemies in an instant. Before long, the tide of battle had completely shifted. What the hell is going on with these brats? The Sand Shinobi were in utter disbelief. Using jutsu was not shocking in itself. The real problem was that the Hidden Leaf Village genin were not even forming seals. Many times, they assumed the kids were preparing for taijutsu combat, only to be blindsided by a surprise ninjutsu attack. It was not that the jutsu were overwhelmingly powerful. They were still within the normal range of A-rank techniques. The real issue was that they appeared out of nowhere, without warning or preparation, making them nearly impossible to defend against. When had the shinobi world developed so many sealless jutsu? Was this the secret behind Hidden Leaf Village's dominance as the strongest hidden village? In just a short time, the pursuing enemy force was completely wiped out. However, the three genin still seemed unsatisfied. That's it? It's already over? I still have 6 scrolls left that I haven't even used. I guess this is fine. I only had 1 left anyway. Off to the side, the squad captain stood frozen, utterly baffled. He suddenly felt old. When had the world changed so much? Why did he have no idea what they were talking about? Noticing his confusion, the three genin finally revealed the truth. Actually, Captain, we're using something called scientific ninja tools. They can store and release jutsu at will. After listening to their explanation and recalling the strict orders from higher-ups to keep this technology confidential until deployment, the captain finally understood. So that's why. No wonder you could use so many jutsu without forming seals. If this technology spreads, Hidden Leaf Village will be invincible. A similar situation was playing out across the entire western battlefield. More and more enemy shinobi found themselves caught off guard by Hidden Leaf Village's sealless jutsu. Even Jonin-level shinobi, who typically had the experience to counter most tactics, were falling victim to these unpredictable attacks. Chunin and Geinin, who had even slower reaction speeds, stood no chance. Fire and water jutsu were appearing everywhere, and occasionally, a thunderous sound would echo as the Chidori technique was unleashed. The most shocking event occurred when a lone Geinin, trapped in a desperate situation, casually raised his hand and activated wood-style, Nativity of a World of Trees. This was a legendary jutsu, known as the signature technique of Hashirama Senju. That single act completely altered the course of the battle. The Sand Shinobi, lacking any prior experience in countering such techniques, found themselves utterly overwhelmed. What's going on? Am I imagining things? Since when did Hidden Leaf Village's Geinin become more troublesome than their Jonin? No. I feel the same way. At least Jonin have known weaknesses. We have intelligence files on them, so we can prepare in advance. But these Geinin. This is absurd. Yesterday, I fought a kid who could use combined element jutsu. If I weren't a puppeteer, I might not have made it back alive. What kind of training does Hidden Leaf Village even put its Geinin through? This was the question everyone was asking. Unfortunately, no one had an answer. In just 3 days, despite having twice the number of troops, the Sand forces were completely routed. Their defensive line in the Land of Rivers collapsed, forcing them to retreat all the way back to the border of the Land of Wind. At first, they braced themselves for an all-out invasion. But strangely, Hidden Leaf Village's forces suddenly stopped advancing. Are they hesitant to invade the Land of Wind? Many of the Sand Shinobi began to believe this was the case. In reality, only Hidden Leaf Village's forces knew the truth. The Geinin had run out of jutsu scrolls. Back in the village, production was being ramped up, but until the new supplies arrived, they were ordered to avoid unnecessary conflict. For 2 months, the battlefield remained eerily quiet. Then, just as the Sand forces had finished replenishing their numbers and were preparing for a counteroffensive, the worst possible nightmare descended upon them. Hidden Leaf Village's Geinin had returned. Fully rearmed. Faced with such incomprehensible power, the Sand forces suffered the most devastating defeat in their history. An army nearly 10,000 strong was utterly shattered. The once imposing formations of the Sand Shinobi, which should have been their greatest strength, crumbled helplessly in the face of Hidden Leaf Village's relentless onslaught. The casualties mounted rapidly, and any semblance of strategic coordination was completely lost. It was a crushing, irreversible defeat. Seeing the enemy in disarray, Izuna Uchiha showed no mercy. He led the Hidden Leaf Village forces in a relentless advance, driving deep into the heart of the Land of Wind. There would be no respite for the defeated, only the bitter price of their failure. By the 14th year of Hidden Leaf Village's founding, Hidden Sand Village, unable to mount any further resistance, was finally forced to accept reality. Ignoring the objections of the Shinobi Sect's envoys, they officially declared their defeat in the war. The cost of this war had been devastating for Hidden Sand Village. Over 7,000 Shinobi had been lost, an uncountable number were wounded, and the economic toll was beyond calculation. Yet, amid the suffering, they were left with one crucial revelation: they had uncovered the true source of Hidden Leaf Village's overwhelming power. A revolutionary force known as scientific ninja tools. Compared to this technological marvel, the puppet techniques the Sand Shinobi had once prided themselves on now seemed crude and outdated, almost laughably primitive. The bitterness of defeat was undeniable, but the leaders of Hidden Sand Village no longer lingered on the past. Instead, their focus shifted entirely to a single objective: unlocking the secrets of scientific ninja tools. If they could reverse engineer these advancements, then surely, they could recover from this loss and rise again. Thus, Hidden Sand Village gathered every skilled researcher and craftsman they could find, pouring all their resources into the study of these enigmatic tools. Yet, despite their determination, they quickly realized the harsh truth: this was technology decades beyond anything the Shinobi world had ever seen. Their attempts to decipher it were akin to primitive tribesmen trying to understand a modern smartphone. Forget replicating it. They could barely comprehend its workings. Blindly pursuing such knowledge without a proper foundation was not only futile but could even lead to disastrous consequences. Meanwhile, in the Land of Lightning, Hidden Cloud's village faced a similar predicament. The miniature ninjutsu scrolls, once reserved for the Uchiha-led battlefield, were finally distributed en masse to Tobirama Senju's forces in the north after the war in the Land of Wind had concluded. Yet, this blatant favoritism did not go unnoticed. Hyuga Yaoi, a staunch supporter of Kyosuke, had ensured that these supplies were prioritized for Uchiha-led battles. Tobirama, despite his protests, had no choice but to accept the reality of the situation. At the very least, he could take solace in the fact that he was receiving them at all. Even in death, that bastard is still making my life difficult. Tobirama grumbled, his frustration evident. With nowhere else to direct his anger, he could only vent his irritation at the Raikage. However, with the supply of ninjutsu scrolls, Hidden Leaf Village's northern forces swiftly regained their momentum. What had once been a grueling campaign against Hidden Cloud's village turned into a fierce counteroffensive. Soon, the shinobi of Hidden Cloud's village learned a harsh lesson. Hidden Leaf Village's so-called geinin were far more dangerous than their rank suggested. Word spread rapidly across the battlefield. If you encounter a chunin from Hidden Leaf Village, don't be afraid. Stand your ground and fight. If you come across a jonin, don't panic. Retreat if possible, but if escape is not an option, hold your ground and you might survive. But if you ever see a Hidden Leaf Village geinin running toward you with an eager grin, run. Run as fast as you possibly can. At first, the Raikage scoffed at such claims, dismissing them as mere exaggerations. That was, until he himself was sent flying by a single punch from the wooden golem. It was only then that he was forced to accept the bitter truth. He, the Raikage, the undisputed leader of Hidden Cloud's village, had been injured by a mere child of the Senju clan. His rage burned hot, but beneath that fury, a deep-seated fear took root. Hidden Leaf Village had grasped a power unlike anything the world had ever seen. Who could possibly stand against them now? Even after losing the protection of the three gods, Hidden Leaf Village had not declined. If anything, they had grown even stronger. By February of Hidden Leaf Village's 14th year, Hidden Cloud's village was left with no choice but to sign yet another humiliating treaty, acknowledging their defeat and agreeing to a series of crippling reparations. 2 months later, in April, Hidden Mist Village followed suit, surrendering and offering vast resources to the Land of Whirlpools as compensation. And with that, after 2 long years, the First Shinobi World War had finally reached its conclusion. Hidden Leaf Village, having single-handedly confronted and triumphed over the combined forces of the 3 great hidden villages, emerged victorious in a way that would be remembered for generations to come. In the aftermath, the Shinobi sect, humbled by Hidden Leaf Village's overwhelming power, adopted a more cautious and subdued approach. They made repeated attempts to negotiate with Hidden Leaf Village's leadership, hoping to persuade the village to adopt their philosophies and find some semblance of common ground. But their efforts were in vain. Any fool who dared to challenge Hidden Leaf Village's authority was swiftly and mercilessly dealt with, personally by Haruto Uchiha. By the 15th year of Hidden Leaf Village's founding, Haruto Uchiha had reached the age of 20, his strength officially entering the realm of the Super Kage. In his base form, he was already comparable to Madara and Hashirama at the end of the Warring States period in the original timeline. If he were to unleash his Dujutsu to its full potential, the actual extent of his power would depend on the caliber of his opponent. Hashirama himself had once tested his abilities, and in a state of fully activated ocular powers, Haruto could briefly attain combat prowess rivaling that of the Six Paths level. As expected of Kyosuke's son. He is far stronger than my own brat. With him here, Hidden Leaf Village's future is in safe hands. However, in the 8th month of that same year, a devastating piece of news spread through the village like wildfire. Senju Hashirama, the man once proclaimed as the god, was gravely ill. Chapter 267, Hidden Leaf Village Year 24, a wedding and the arrival of geniuses in the northeastern corner of Hidden Leaf Village, within the Senju clan's compound, a heavy atmosphere loomed over the main hall. Inside one of the rooms, the sound of coughing echoed repeatedly. Cough, cough. The once unrivaled shinobi, Senju Hashirama, had been unconscious for 3 days. His life force, once as vibrant and unyielding as an ancient tree, now flickered like a candle in the wind. A tense silence enveloped the gathering. Nearly all the village's high-ranking officials were present, their expressions solemn. Everyone understood the grim reality. This might be the last day of Hashirama's life. By the bedside, a small figure trembled with sorrow. Grandfather. No. Please don't leave me. The 5-year-old Tsunade clung desperately to the edge of the bed, her voice hoarse from crying. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded with childlike innocence. I promise I will listen to you from now on. I will be a good girl. Just don't leave me. Standing nearby, Senju Tobirama, his usual stern composure shaken, struggled to hold back his own grief. His younger brother's white hair seemed even paler under the dim lighting. He took a deep breath, preparing to console his niece when, unexpectedly, a large yet gentle hand rested on her head. Is that so? The weak yet familiar voice made Tsunoda's breath hitch. She looked up in shock and disbelief. Then, shall we make a pinky promise? Tsunoda's teary eyes widened as they met the kind and loving gaze of her grandfather. Grandfather. You're awake. Her shout of surprise sent a ripple of emotion through the crowd. For those waiting outside the room, that voice was both a relief and a painful reminder. So, the time has come. With reddened eyes, Tobirama slowly stepped out of the room. He turned to the gathered individuals and, with a heavy heart, gave them a silent nod. One by one, they entered to bid farewell to the man who had shaped the very foundation of their village. Among them were Haruto Uchiha and Nagi's Uchiha. The siblings approached Hashirama together, their eyes filled with sorrow yet gratitude. You too. Hashirama smiled, his voice warm despite his frailty. Do not grieve. I will soon reunite with your father. Lately, I have been dreaming a lot about the past. His words, spoken with such clarity, made the moment feel surreal. For someone on the brink of passing, he looked strangely at peace. The future of Hidden Leaf Village rests in your hands now. Hashirama continued, his gaze filled with unshaken trust. And of course, just like Kyosuke, I wish to see you both live happy lives. He chuckled softly before giving them a playful wink, subtly motioning toward the window. Following his gaze, Haruto and Nagisa turned their heads. Outside, among those who had came to pay their respects, stood Kurama Jun and Iri. Both carried expressions of deep reverence. Live happily, huh? Haruto murmured to himself, as if making a silent resolution. Nagisa, on the other hand, seemed as carefree as ever. It was hard to tell how much of the conversation she had truly absorbed. As the siblings left the room, Saratobe Hiruzen stepped inside alone. A man of exceptional talent, Hiruzen had mastered 5 elemental nature transformations and was highly regarded by both Senju brothers. And so, in his final moments, Hashirama made a decision for his granddaughter's future. Tsunoda. His voice was soft yet firm. From now on, Hiruzen will be your teacher. Tsunoda, still sobbing, looked at the older man hesitantly. Hiruzen knelt before her, offering a reassuring smile. I will guide her well, Hashirama-sama. He promised. She will become a remarkable shinobi. True to his word, Saratobe Hiruzen would go on to nurture a generation of legendary shinobi. The Sannin, whose influence would shape the very course of the shinobi world. Orochimaru, whose research would push the boundaries of human potential. Jiraiya, who would mentor the destined child of prophecy. Tsunoda, who would one day become Hokage and revolutionize medical ninjutsu. In his prime, Hiruzen proved himself to be an exceptional leader. Despite lacking a powerful clan's backing, he navigated the political turmoil of the village, solidifying his position with the help of Denzo. He maintained Hidden Leaf Village's stability even after the loss of the Senju brothers. Yet, time spares no one. Even the strongest of men eventually grow weary, their once firm resolve clouded by age and hesitation. Regardless, in his youth, Saratobe Hiruzen was undoubtedly a formidable leader, one whom even Haruto Uchiha regarded as a worthy rival. Though Hiruzen had only just stepped into the realm of Kage-level power, Haruto knew that the man's true strength lay beyond mere combat prowess. As Hiruzen left the room, fewer people remained. The farewells were nearly complete. On his way back, Haruto walked alongside Iri. Just as they were about to return home, an inexplicable impulse led him into a nearby flower shop owned by the Yamanaka clan. Iri watched in surprise as the usually dense Haruto emerged, holding a single rose. Without a word, he thrust it into her hands. For you. The gesture was clumsy and abrupt, but before she could respond, Haruto had already turned and briskly walked away.